Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Awaken Mutant Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Toshi stared at the kid that stood across the roof from him. "See, can a weakling like me be a hero?" The boy stammered. Toshi just stared at the boy as he felt the smoke begin to pour off of him. The kid was a scrawny thing, short and probably no more than 100 pounds sopping wet. He had fluffy green hair with a pair of green wolf ears poking out the top. The explosion of steam blocked the kid from view as he continued to speak. "I've got a pretty simple mutation," the boy told him. "I've had it since I was born. People have always told me I couldn't be a hero with such a weak quirk, but it's all I've ever wanted. I just want to help people with a smile like you do." The boy finally looked up and saw Toshi standing amongst the dissipating steam. "Huh?" the boy gasped. "All might." He took a sniff of the air. "You smell the same," he murmured. He straightened and looked Toshi in the eye. "What happened, All Might?" "Huh?" Toshi laughed. "That's some nose you got there, kid." "Yes, it's still me." Toshi lifted up his shirt and showed off the scar. "Got this as a nasty fight with a villain a few years ago. Now I can only be a hero for about 5 hours a day." "That explains the smell," the boy nodded. "Smell?" Toshi asked. "I'm sorry." The boy shrunk back, his ears pressing back against his head. "I don't mean to, but I can smell things. I know it's creepy, but I could smell the old blood that clings to you." "It's not creepy, my boy," Toshi assured him as he walked forward. The boy flinched back away from him. Toshi slowly reached his arm forward, letting the boy watch as he put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's quite impressive." The boy stared at him, tears instantly coming to his eyes. "A hero's life is full of dangers," Toshi continued. "I know that better than anyone. So, when you ask if a weakling could be a hero, I think the answer would be no." The boy's face fell instantly. It was like Toshi had shattered something inside him, maybe his hope. "Don't misunderstand me," Toshi huffed. "A weakling cannot be a hero. But you do not have to remain a weakling. If you're willing to put in the work, then you can be a hero." The boy's tears returned in full force. He threw himself at Toshi and wrapped him in a tight hug. He had more strength in those scrawny arms than Toshi would have thought possible. The hug actually managed to hurt. Toshi coughed up a little blood. He tried to hide it, but the boy reacted instantly. He pushed Toshi back to arm's length before he had a chance to wipe away the blood. "Oh no," the boy cried as he ripped the backpack off of his back. He tore through it and brought out a pack of tissues. He didn't hand them to Toshi. Rather, he reached up and started wiping at Toshi's chin himself. "It's okay, my boy." Toshi laughed as he took the tissue out of the boy's hand and took over wiping off the blood. "This is unfortunately a normality for me." The boy's eyebrows knit forward into a frown. "But, I know," Toshi nodded. "But the world still needs me." Toshi patted the boy's shoulder and began walking away. With any luck, the door would be unlocked. "All Might," the boy called. Toshi turned to see the boy staring after him, a look of pure conviction on his features. Gone was the teary-eyed boy from before. In his place stood someone that felt like a blast from the past, a boy full of determination. "I'll be the hero you need," he told Toshi. Almost screamed it at him. "I'll make that burden you carry lighter until you don't need to carry it anymore." Toshi couldn't help but smile. He wanted to laugh. The bubbly feeling inside of him made him feel 10 years younger. "What's your name, my boy?" Toshi asked him. "I need to know the name of my hero after all." "I'm Midoriya Izuku," the boy answered with a firm nod. "Well, young Midoriya, I'll be keeping my eye out for you," Toshi told him. With that, he left the rooftop and left behind the boy with big dreams. Today was the day. It had been 4 years since that day that had changed his life. All Might's words had stuck with him. Izuku carried them close to his heart and let them drive him forward. Izuku had started working out the very next day. He convinced his mom to get him a gym membership and he went almost every day. He found he enjoyed it more than he ever would have thought possible. And after a few months he started learning judo as well. All Might had said that hard work was all that was standing between him and being a hero, so he'd work harder than anyone else to achieve his dream. But it was more than that too. All Might, the strongest hero in the world, was pushing himself too hard. He was hurt. He might even be dying. He needed someone to be there to pick up the slack. So, when Izuku was struggling, when that weight seemed too heavy, when he'd been thrown down too many times, he remembered his words, his own promise to All Might. Then he'd do another set, or get off the floor, and he'd continue to work. The results spoke for themselves. Gone was the short, scrawny kid. He'd put on a lot of muscle and sprouted like a weed all through high school. Now he was over 200 pounds of muscle and standing at 190 centimeters. The bullies had left him alone after he had started buffing up. He didn't exactly become Mr. Popular, but at least he wasn't antagonized anymore. Or rather, most of them had left him alone. "Move, you freak." The familiar voice of his first friend and last bully came from behind him. Izuku sighed and stepped aside. "You just had to ask Bakugo." Izuku shook his head. "Shut it, nerd," Bakugo snarled as he stomped past. It was amazing to him how little Bakugo scared him these days. He remembered when the smallest explosion was enough to have him backing up into the closest corner. A few years of getting slammed into sparring mats and suddenly Bakugo's posturing just didn't have the same effect. Because that's all it was. Bakugo would yell and scream, but he was too concerned about his record to ever actually hit anybody. Deciding that he had reminisced enough, Izuku stepped forward and towards the test that would determine if his effort had been worth it. Of course, he tripped over his own feet and headed face first towards the brick path. Ochako was pumped. She had worked herself sick many times with training. It was all going to be worth it when she made it into UA University though, and today was the entrance exam. She was walking through the gate when she saw a tall boy with a mop of fluffy green hair and a matching tail poking its way out of his outfit. Ochako couldn't help but notice he had really broad shoulders. They were stretching out the back of his black tracksuit. Her mouth was starting to feel dry. Then he tripped. Ochako didn't even think. She reached out and caught him with her quirk, grabbing hold of the only place she could touch him, his tail. The fur was so soft. "Sorry," she squeaked as she realized what she'd done. It's just that it would have been bad luck to fall before the exam." "No problem," the boy laughed. Oh God, his laugh was so light and cute. What was it doing leaving the body of someone like him? She helped straighten him out and released her quirk. He smiled down at her, showing off his happy smile and enlarged canines. "I really appreciate the help." "No problem." Ochako nodded quickly. "Good luck." With that, she sprinted inside the testing center as quick as she could. Not the smoothest exit, but she just couldn't help it. Her heart was pumping so fast. Izuku was feeling pretty confident in how things were going. Robots weren't exactly an ideal opponent for him, but they were light enough to throw and the metal was weak enough that his claws could tear through their bodies. Combined with his speed, he had managed to rack up a little over 40 points. The stench of fear and the screams that came with it assaulted his senses. Izuku turned to find everyone on the busy street running towards him. Behind them lumbered a robot larger than anything he'd seen in the test. It towered over some of the buildings and far into the sky above. Izuku was turning away to join the fleeing crowd when another scream rang out. It wasn't one of fear. It was a scream of pain. It brought with it the scent of blood. Izuku turned back and saw her, the brown-haired girl who'd saved him at the entrance. She was pinned beneath a giant piece of rubble. "Help," she called weakly as she reached her arm out, reaching for anyone to help her. Izuku took off running. Toshi was relaxing in the observation deck and watching the applicants take the exam. The dark room was covered wall to wall in small screens, each one showing a different part of the action. The other teachers were grading the students for heroic actions, but Toshi was a first-time teacher. He was just here to observe. Well then, and keep his eye out for any potential successor. "Anyone catch your eye?" Netsu chirped. Toshi looked beside him to find the large rat, small bear, average dog sitting on the couch with him. "No one yet," Toshi chuckled. "But the real test is yet to come." "Indeed it is," Netsu laughed. "Why don't we see what they make of it?" With that, the tiny principal pulled out his remote. It had a singular large red button on it. With a maniacal cackle, he pressed the button. The very room around them began to shake as the enormous zero-pointers were unleashed upon the different testing centers. Looking around at the screens, Toshi found mass exodus after mass exodus as students fled from the oncoming threat. Applicant 4777 is using the distraction to collect more points. Vlad King grunted as he gestured to one of the screens. The young man with the explosion quirk was indeed destroying the otherwise ignored robots as the zero-pointer lumbered closer. Is it safe to let the zero-pointer continue so close to him? Midnight asked. Probably not. Netsu sighed. Powerloader, have the ground alpha zero-pointer pull back. On it, Powerloader called. The teachers all watched as the zero-pointer seamlessly shifted to a slightly different direction. It wasn't obvious, but the young man was no longer in immediate danger. Should he have points deducted for reckless behavior? Toshi asked, as we don't know if he could have. Wait, she'd. Vlad King cursed, interrupting the principal. Ground beta. Toshi turned in time to see the ground beta zero-pointer throwing its fist at the ground. Right at the impact zone was a girl pinned under rubble. Power loader, Netsu commanded instantly. Teachers were rushing to their feet, but there was nothing they could do to get there in time. No time, Power loader shouted as he typed away at the command hub. Before anyone else could act, there was a streak of green and black on the screen and then a cloud of dust as the zero-pointer's fist made impact. The teachers were all staring at the screens, frozen in fear. Recovery girl, I want you on standby. Netsu began ordering as the dust started to settle. Who can get her there quickest? I can, Eraserhead answered immediately. All Might had thought the man had been asleep, but he was perfectly aware now. Unless All Might has any time left. I'm the fastest at city navigation. I don't, Toshi confirmed with a shake of his head. He had never felt so useless in his entire life. Wait, Midnight gasped as she pointed at the screen. The camera focused in and revealed a large applicant with green hair standing there, holding back the zero-pointer's fist with both hands. Who the hell? Applicant 4778, Cementos informed them as he read the file. Midoriya Izuku. Quirk is listed as Wolf. What was that name? Toshi asked breathlessly as he stared at the screen. He felt like he was still picking his jaw up off the floor. His voice was barely a whisper. Midoriya Izuku, Nenzu chirped. Do you know him, Yagi? Toshi laughed breathlessly. The shock of it all was insane. I met him once, he explained. He could feel the eyes on him, but he focused instead on the once scrawny boy he remembered. Looks like he might have taken my words to heart. Ochako stared back at the guy that just saved her life. His muscles bulged beneath the black tracksuit as he single-handedly held back a fist the size of a bus. She recognized the green hair and tail as the boy she'd met outside by the gate. The zero-pointer pulled back its fist and the boy fell forward onto his knees. He was panting. The zero-pointer wasn't done though. It kept pulling its fist back and readied another punch. Sheet, the boy cursed. He turned around and ran straight to Ochako. He grabbed underneath the rubble that was pinning her and began to lift. His scream of pain was agonizing as he threw the chunk of concrete off of her. He scooped her up before she could ask if he was okay. And then they were flying down the street and away from the zero-pointer. Ochako had never moved so fast in all her life. She wanted to say something, to thank him, but as she realized she was being pressed against the guy's chest, the words died in her throat. Oh God, his muscles were so firm. That's it, folks. Present Mike called and broke her out of her thoughts. Please make your way to the entrance for first aid and transportation back to the main campus. The rumbling of the zero-pointer behind them stopped. Oh, thank God, the boy sighed. He stumbled to a stop. He stood there panting for a moment before he gave Ochako a small smile. Do you think you can walk? Why, yeah, Ochako nodded. The boy put her down slowly, but as soon as the weight hit her ankle, she flinched hard. Crap, the boy cursed. He slipped underneath Ochako's arm and helped keep the weight off of her leg. I gotcha. Thanks, she stammered. She tried to keep the blush on her cheeks from growing any larger than it already had. I'm Midoriya, by the way. The boy introduced himself as they took off towards the entrance once again. You're Araka, she told him. Does anybody need healing? A voice shouted from the gate. I guess that'd be us. The boy joked as he headed towards where the voice came from. They came across a short woman in a lab coat. Is everything all right, dearies? The woman asked. It's her ankle, Midoriya explained. It got crushed. Let me see, the woman instructed. Midoriya set Ochako down so she was sitting on the floor before the woman. She grabbed Ochako's ankle and inspected it with a click of her tongue. Definitely broken, she muttered. She put Ochako's ankle back down and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Instantly, Ochako was hit with a wave of exhaustion. It was like all the energy had simply fled her body. That should do it, dearie. She turned to Midoriya. Now what about you, young man? Oh, Midoriya chuckled as though only just remembering he was hurt. I may have torn something in my shoulder. Let me see, the woman instructed again. Midoriya shrugged off his jacket with a flinch and turned his back to them. Ochako gasped when she saw. Beneath his tank top, both of his shoulders were covered in ugly, dark, purple bruises that spread down his arms. You've definitely torn something. The older woman muttered darkly. Sit down. I'll heal you, but you might lose consciousness and I don't want you falling over. Yes, ma'am, Midoriya nodded. He sat down on the ground beside Ochako and she tried not to think too much about how close they were. The old woman gave him a kiss on the forehead and the bruises faded from his body. His eyelids fluttered and a yawn escaped him before he promptly passed out and fell atop Ochako. Ape, Ochako squeaked. Hush, dearie, the woman chided her with a chuckle. He should wake up soon. Oh, okay, Ochako managed. Keep an eye on him for me, will you? The woman winked as she turned to leave without another word. Ochako wanted to argue, but between the woman's fast pace and her tongue still feeling like lead in her mouth, she didn't manage to get out another word before the woman was gone. She looked down at Midoriya's head resting in her lap, and she couldn't bring herself to move him. Izuku was so tired of waiting. It had been over a week since the exam and he still hadn't gotten his results. Hiraraka, the girl he'd saved and then fallen asleep on, had exchanged numbers with him after he had woken up. The two of them had commiserated over the waiting and discussed their potential scores. It helped, but only a little. Izuku, his mother cried as she stormed into the kitchen where he sat. It came. She waved around a white envelope. She shoved the envelope into his hands, crumpling it in her rush. Izuku smiled as he took the envelope from her. Thanks, Mom, he told her. He set the envelope down in front of himself as his mom took a seat at the table with him. Once she was settled in, he opened up the letter. A metal disc fell out of the envelope and onto the table. A familiar laugh sounded and filled the kitchen as a transparent blue hologram flickered to life over the table. All Might, Izuku and his mom exclaimed together. That's right, All Might laughed. I am here, though I bet you're wondering why. You see, I'll be taking a teaching position at UA this coming semester and starting at the same time as the next batch of incoming students. That's amazing, Inko gasped. To be taught by All Might. SHH mom, Izuku chuckled. Listen, enough about me. Onto you, young Midoriya, All Might continued. You did wonderfully on the written portion, scoring in the top 1% of applicants. Oh Izuku, his mom cried as she wrapped him in a hug. And you continued to excel in the physical as well. All Might praised. It is nice to see you took my words to heart. You defeated enough villains to earn yourself 45 points. Such a score is more than enough to pass. But you were not scored solely on villain points. You passed. Inko gasped. At the same time Izuku exclaimed, I wasn't. That's right, All Might nodded. Take a look at this. The hologram switched to show his struggle against the 0-pointer. Izuku tried not to flinch at the scream of shock from his mother. His shoulders ached with phantom pains at the memory. The image flickered and changed to one of Uraraka. She was standing in a hallway and speaking with present Mike. Please, she begged him. Midoriya, that's his name. He saved my life and he got really hurt doing it. He deserves to get in. If I have to give him some of my points, fine. But he has to get in. Don't worry, little listener, present Mike assured her kindly. I'm afraid you can't do that, but I promise that everything will work out. The hologram switched back into the shape of All Might. Though there was nothing to be gained from it, you leapt into action to save another, All Might explained. Your actions were those of a true hero. You saved young Uraraka and inspired her to act. What kind of hero school would we be if we didn't reward such actions? A panel of judges acted in secret to award hero points. And you, Midoriya Izuku, earned a total of 50 hero points. With a total score of 95 points, you earned first place in the entrance exam. Come, young Midoriya, this is your hero academy. Izuku. His mom cried as tears flooded from her eyes and her arms wrapped around him. Izuku hugged her back as he stared at the little metal disc that had just told him all his dreams were coming true. Izuku was stoked for move-in. Sure, he'd miss his mom and his bed and the delivery place next door, but this was UA. He was a student at the UA University. So Suhim, despite everything he was leaving behind, he was excited, which might explain why he'd arrived an hour before the move-in even started. He was hanging outside the building. His bags and boxes had been unloaded beside him. He was doing his best to act cool. And not like he was having the biggest internal freak out of his life. He was leaning against the wall and switching between staring around looking for signs of anyone else and checking his phone for any updates from Uraraka. A tired-looking man in a black jumpsuit finally arrived and unlocked the door to the dorm. He didn't make any comment on Izuku's presence as he slumped away. Izuku didn't have time to worry about that. He picked up his stuff and walked into his new home. To call it extravagant would have been an understatement. There was a massive sitting room with giant couches and an enormous TV. The dining table was just as oversized. It looked like it was designed for every single student who lived in the dorms to be able to eat at it at once, which made sense now that Izuku thought about it. Izuku noticed the stack of envelopes on the table and made his way over. Each one had a name on it, so he grabbed his. Inside was just a single key. Engraved on its surface was 2D. Putting together that it was probably a room number, he headed for the stairs. Sure enough, the rooms on the second floor were each marked by the number 2 in a letter. He found 2D and unlocked the door with his key. The room was nice. It needed some personal touches, but the bed, desk, and private bathroom were a good start. Izuku spent the next few hours unpacking. He hung up all his shirts and put away all his other clothes. He set up the desk with his laptop and a little cup of pencils. On the walls he put up a couple hero posters. He didn't want to overwhelm the room with them, but they always helped inspire him. The vintage Bronze Age All Might poster to remind him why he was doing this. The Maruko poster reminded him that he could do it. When Izuku was really young, the other kids had found his quirk cool. But once other people started developing quirks and Izuku wasn't the only one anymore, the tone changed. Suddenly everyone was saying that his quirk was useless. A weak mutation quirk. The other kids had told him as they cruelly laughed, could never be a hero's quirk. He had run home in tears. For months he listened to the taunts and jeers. Just when he was starting to lose hope, a new hero had made her debut. Maruko was a badass from day one. Her debut involved a brawl that destroyed an entire building. She didn't take crap from anyone about anything. Not because she was a woman. Not because she was bad at teamwork, and definitely not because of her quirk. Izuku would never forget what it was like to see her on TV. He'd just gotten home from daycare and had begged his mom to turn on the news. The second she saw the destruction of Maruko's debut, she had been ready to turn it off. But when they saw the bunny-eared heroine come bursting out of the rubble, Izuku felt his heart leap into his throat. Izuku wasn't sure if Maruko ever beat All Might out for the spot of his favorite hero, but she was damn close and would always hold a special place in his heart. And now she would keep her place on his wall. Returning to the rest of the room, he threw a simple blue comforter on the bed over his white sheets and hung dark gray curtains over the window. He took a look around and sighed. It was a little simple, but that was fine with him anyways. It felt cozy and warm and just a little like home. He plopped down atop the bed. Oh God, the mattress was comfy. He could afford a nap, right? He was asleep before he could really debate it. Izuku sat bolt upright as a knock on his door woke him up. He groggily stumbled out of bed into the door. He opened it to see a boy with blonde hair. A black streak dyed into it. "Hey man," the boy greeted. "Sorry if I woke you up. We're doing a meet and greet in the common room." "Thanks," Izuku yawned. "I didn't actually mean to sleep that long." "It's chill man," the guy laughed. "I'm Kaminari." Midoriya. Izuku introduced himself. "Well, it's nice to meet you, dude," Kaminari told him. "I've still gotta hit the rest of the rooms, but I'll see you down there." "Right," Izuku nodded. He ducked back into his room real quick. He put on a fresh coat of non-scented antiperspirant and a new shirt. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle at the kanji on it. In plain black letters it read T-shirt. Classic. He grabbed his phone and headed downstairs. As he walked, he checked his phone and found a bunch of texts from Uraraka. He was still reading through them all when he walked into the common room. "Midoriya," he heard shouted across the room. Izuku looked up and found Uraraka running towards him. "Hey Uraraka," he greeted her with a smile. She came to a stop right in front of him, her arms crossed and a pout on her face. "You ignored all my texts," she said accusingly. "Sorry about that." Izuku chuckled as he rubbed at the back of his head nervously. "I fell asleep after I finished unpacking." "Who's this Raka?" A girl with curly pink hair and pink skin asked as she skipped up to Uraraka's side. "This is Midoriya," Uraraka told her. "Midoriya, this is Ashido Mina. Just call me Mina." The girl, Mina, told him as she extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you," Izuku said as he shook her hand. "Oh, sexy and polite," Mina teased. Izuku instantly felt the blush flood his face. "Mina," Uraraka chided her as she smacked Mina on the arm. "You can't just say that." "Oh, so you agree?" Mina asked flirtatiously. "Anyway," Uraraka squeaked. The pink blush on her cheeks grew a little redder. "Come join everyone, Midoriya." "All right." Izuku nodded as he followed Uraraka over to the couch. He did his best to ignore the laughing Mina behind them. Uraraka and Izuku sat down, but neither one managed to say anything. It wasn't necessarily awkward, but there was a definite tension there. "So Raka," Mina called as she plopped down on the couch next to Uraraka. "How do you know Midori?" "Oh," Uraraka exclaimed with a laugh. "He stopped the 0-pointer from crushing me." "He what?" Mina screamed in a total break of her teasing character that Izuku was getting used to. Everyone in the room was now looking at them thanks to her scream. "Yeah," Uraraka nodded excitedly. "It was super crazy. He caught its fist and stopped it from killing me. The 0-pointer was all like rat. And Midoriya was just like Oosh, and then he picked me up and got me out of there." "That's so manly," a boy with spiky red hair called out. "Hey guys," Kaminari called as he came down the stairs. "I found the last person we were missing." Izuku watched as Bakugo came down the stairs behind Kaminari. Bakugo's eyes scanned the room and took it all in with a smug smirk. When he saw Izuku though, his eyes narrowed, and his face contorted into anger. "What are you doing here, you mutant fuck?" Bakugo spat. The reaction from the room was instant. Shouts of anger and outrage filled the room as several students jumped to their feet. "What the hell, man?" the red-haired boy shouted. "That type of language is wholly inappropriate," a tall blue-haired boy declared. "Don't speak to him like that," Uraraka demanded as she leapt to her feet. There were several other students that defended him verbally, but 2 students didn't say anything as they put themselves between him and Bakugo. There was a girl with long dark green hair, and a boy with silver hair, a mask, and 6 arms. Their body language was clearly defensive. "Huh?" Bakugo scoffed. "You bunch of extras don't know what's what. Well, let me help you with the uptake." Bakugo's palms sparked dangerously, and the sweet scent of nitroglycerin filled the air. "See, I'm here to be the next number 1, Bakugo explained. His face was an overly confident grin once again. "I'm not gonna let anyone stand in my way. But that freak of a nobody doesn't even deserve to share the air I breathe, much less go to the same school." "Enough," the red-headed boy demanded. "If you think we're just gonna sit here and let you bully one of our classmates, then you've got another thing coming." "What did you call me?" Bakugo snapped. "What, you don't think I can recognize a bully?" The red-headed boy scoffed. "I've seen enough to know one when I see one. And there isn't anything I hate more than a bully." "Yeah," Mina shouted in agreement. "So you lay off, man, or we'll file a complaint." Bakugo growled at them all, explosions popping in his open palms. When no one backed down though, his eyebrows knit together even further. "What the fuck ever?" Bakugo barked venomously as he spun back around. He stomped up the steps without so much as a backwards glance. There was an awkward silence in the common room as what just happened sunk in. Several people plopped down heavily in their seats while others stayed standing and at the ready. Izuku was still just staring around in shock. A hand on his arm snapped his attention back to the moment and more importantly to the girl beside him. "Are you okay?" Uraraka asked gently. "Yeah," Izuku chuckled. It was weird. He felt like he was floating. "Just never had anyone stand up for me like that before." "Well, get used to it," Mina declared as she slammed back down on the couch. "'Cause I'm not about to let some jerk get away with shit like that." "While I agree, a hero shouldn't use such language," the blue-haired boy told her as he approached. He offered them all a bow. "My name is Idatenya." It is a pleasure to meet you. Oh, that's right, Mina exclaimed as she leapt back to her feet. We still have to do introductions. Is now really the best time? A tall girl with black hair asked, after everything that just happened. Like hell am I gonna let that bastard ruin our good time? Mina huffed. Come on, it'll be fun. Izuku sat in the classroom and waited for their heroics coordinator to arrive. His ear twitched in irritation. There was a lot of tension in the room. No one had spoken since Bakugo had come in, and after 10 minutes it was getting awkward. Finally, the professor arrived. At least, Izuku thought he was the professor. When the door opened, it revealed a yellow caterpillar-like mass. He was certainly surprised. The yellow mess righted itself to reveal a tired-looking man with long black hair. The man slipped out of the sleeping bag and slouched to the front of the room. You're all quiet, the man grunted. Good. This is the hero course, and if you aren't going to take it seriously, you might as well pack your bags now. He inspected the faces around the room. The tension in the room couldn't exactly get worse, but it did change. There was an excitedness to it now that was missing before. My name is Aizawa Shouta. I am the One Heroics coordinator, he told them. Think of me like a homeroom teacher. It's my job to ensure you're actually becoming heroes and not just wasting everybody's time. There was a challenge in that. Everyone could feel it. It left the room charged as if there was an electric current in the air. Now put these on. Aizawa sighed as he held up a stack of folded-up blue uniforms. Meet me at the sports field in 15 minutes or don't bother showing up at all. There was a scramble to race after him as soon as he left the room. Izuku was one of the first ones to the desk. He grabbed the uniform with his name on it and dashed out of the room. After a quick change, they were all gathered before Aizawa on what looked like a classic track field. That took far too long, Aizawa huffed. You'll have that down to less than 5 minutes by the end of the semester. Time is precious and you will treat it as such. There were some murmurs, but for the most part they remained silent. Today we will be doing a quirk apprehension test, Aizawa said. What about the president's welcome speech? Ida demanded with his arm chopping through the air. As heroic students, you're here to put in hard work, not listen to pleasantries, Aizawa explained. Now you'll have done tests similar to this in high school. For the safety of everyone, you aren't allowed to use your quirks in school. UA is different. For this test, you'll be using your quirks and giving it your all. With that, he started walking over to the track. The class followed behind him. We don't have time for things like demonstrations, so we'll be getting straight to work, Aizawa told them. First is the 50-meter sprint. Ida and Asui, you're up. The two students went up to the starting line and got into ready positions. When the starting beep sounded, the two students were off. Ida's engines roared as he raced down the track, Asui hopping quickly behind him. Izuku watched them in amazement. They were so fast. Ida managed a time just over 3 seconds. Not only that, but he seemed dissatisfied that he didn't do it faster. Izuku watched everyone with rapt attention. He was so focused on trying to remember all of the amazing quirks of his classmates that he almost missed it when Aizawa called him and Bakugo to the track. Izuku crouched down at the starting line. The claws on his hand dug into the hardened clay of the track as he readied himself. Bakugo growled angrily as he crouched beside Izuku. It was funny sometimes how much more animalistic Bakugo could be than him. Izuku's ear twitched as the starting beep sounded and he pushed off as hard as he could. The sound of explosions sounded behind him, but Izuku just focused on running as fast as he could. 2.9 seconds. The machine beeped as he sprinted across the finish line. Izuku placed his hands on his knees as he panted desperately for air. He could sprint like crazy, but if he pushed too hard too fast, then he would always need a moment to recover. Bakugo blasted past him, still propelled by his explosive palms. He slid to a stop, glaring back at Izuku as he did. Before the explosive blonde could say anything, though, Aizawa called the next pair up and Bakugo and Izuku were forced to rejoin the class. Izuku was greeted with soft cheers and praises. He couldn't help but smile at his classmates. The rest of the tests went just as smoothly. Izuku did well on the grip strength test, but he was still a long way from scores like Shoji's or Yaoyorozu's. He failed to clear the sand pit in the long jump, but he did get close. No one really excelled in the side steps, though Bakugo did do well by using his explosions to launch himself back and forth. The ball throw was unextraordinary. Izuku managed to score a little over 300 meters, which put him in the top 5 for the event. The seated toe touch was another that he scored well, but not top of the charts in. There were some really flexible girls in the class. The last event was the long-distance run. They were supposed to run for as long as they could, as fast as they could. Izuku loved it. At times he felt like he was built to run. The cool April air only made it better. Yaoyorozu had made an electric bike. Ida was able to reach speeds faster than Izuku would have thought possible. When all the others had flagged and had to stop, the three of them kept on. Izuku would smile at Yaoyorozu when he passed her and waved to Ida as the speedster passed him in turn. Much to Izuku's surprise, Ida was the first one to flag. Izuku heard what sounded like the grinding of gears and then a crash. He turned his head and found Ida sprawled across the track. He pulled himself back up to his feet and limped his way off the track. Once it was just him and Yaoyorozu. Izuku wasn't sure what would happen. So when Yaoyorozu stopped her bike as she finished her next lap, he was surprised. He ran up alongside her and stopped. Good, Aizawa grunted. He turned around to face the students and Izuku and Yaoyorozu rejoined the group. I'm not gonna bother explaining how the points were determined. A holographic ranking chart popped out of the tablet. Izuku was happy to see he'd placed second, behind only Yaoyorozu. The angry sound of explosions quickly ruined it though. What the fuck? I'm behind the fucking furry. Bakugo screamed. Izuku turned in time to see Bakugo launch himself through the air and straight at Izuku. You mutant piece of shit, he shouted as he thrust his arm forward. Several things happened all at once. Bakugo's explosions died in his fist as Izuku slipped back into a defensive stance. Several people screamed, in shock, fear, or anger. Two different things wrapped around Bakugo from opposite directions. One was off-white and the other was a pale red. Bakugo ended up suspended in the air between the two rope-like lengths. Enough, Aizawa demanded. The white scarf around Aizawa's neck was now floating around him and had been thrown out around Bakugo. I don't know what the hell that was about, but I will say this once. If you attack anyone outside of training, you're expelled. If you discriminate against your classmates for any reason, you're expelled. Is that understood? Bakugo snarled from beneath the capture tape as he writhed and continued to try and force his way towards Izuku. I don't have time to teach you how to listen, Aizawa growled. You can go ahead and pack your bags. Bakugo instantly turned his full attention to Aizawa. No one jumped to the boy's defense. No one argued that it was unfair. Bakugo screamed something indignantly from beneath the capture tape. It isn't my job to fix your emotional damage or your broken moral compass, Aizawa responded sharply. I don't have time to do that and to make you a hero. At best you have anger management issues, at worst a superiority complex, and either one makes you a danger in the field. Bakugo screamed curses into the capture tape, but Aizawa just rolled his eyes. Isui, Aizawa called. Release Bakugo so I can take him to the president and arrange his expulsion. Yes, sir, Tsuyu agreed as she unwrapped her tongue from around Bakugo's waist. Bakugo fell hard. As Aizawa turned and began marching away, Bakugo thrashed against the capture weapon with renewed vigor as he was dragged along the dirt. All of the other students just stared after them in silence. The silence remained long after the two of them had disappeared. So does that mean the rest of us are dismissed? Kaminari asked. The silence shattered and several soft murmurs instantly started up. I think so, Gyro shrugged. I don't really feel like waiting around for him to come back. But damn, to just expel the fourth strongest kid in class, Kirishima muttered. But a creature warped by darkness does not deserve to be a hero, Takoyami commented sagely. Yeah, Mina shouted in agreement. Good riddance. You okay, Midoriya? Uraraka asked softly. Izuku's head whipped to the side and he looked down at where Uraraka stood beside him. Why yeah, Izuku nodded. Still just not used to Bakugo being held accountable. Well, you won't have to put up with him anymore, she assured him with a scowl. Honestly, it's ridiculous that he ever got away with behavior like that. Well, when you've got a strong quirk like his, people will let you get away with a lot. Izuku chuckled darkly. Uraraka looked like she wanted to disagree. That's true, Todoroki agreed with a stoic nod before Uraraka got a chance to speak. Society was built for those with strong quirks. But don't all of us have strong quirks? Kaminari asked. I mean, that's how we got here, right? Several students sent glares at the blonde boy. Kaminari shrunk back into his shoulders. Izuku found himself staring at him in shock. No, Ajiro snapped at him. I don't know about you, but I worked my butt off to get here. Well yeah, Kaminari agreed quickly as he raised his hands defensively. I'm just saying we all have quirks that work well for heroics. Izuku couldn't help it anymore. The laughter started to bubble its way out of him. It started as a chuckle, but quickly he was bent over himself as he guffawed. What? Kaminari stammered. Izuku couldn't stop it though. A couple of the other students chuckled as well, Hagakure and Shinso most noticeably. The tears started to sting his eyes as he laughed. Midoriya, Uraraka called nervously as she put a hand on his shoulder. Sorry, Izuku gasped as he tried to smother down the laughter. I've just never had anyone say that about my quirk before. What do you mean? Ajiro asked. I've been called a weak mutant freak since preschool. Izuku confessed with one last chuckle as he wiped the last of the tears away. No way, Kaminari shouted. But you're so strong, Uraraka pointed out with a doubtful shake of her head. Sure, Izuku shrugged. Now that I've spent the last 4 years practically living in the gym. It was the same for me, Shoji added, speaking through one of his duple arms. His voice was steady, but it was like he was keeping most of the emotion out of it. Everyone but my parents said I was too gross or too scary to be a hero. Me too, Tsuyu nodded. No one even wanted to be friends with the frog girl. She put finger quotes around the word frog. Or the kid with a villain's quirk, Shinso muttered bitterly. I'm sorry, Kaminari apologized. He looked really shaken up that people had said such things. I had no idea. An awkward silence settled on the group. It seemed almost as if people were scared to break it this time. Izuku felt bad that he'd dropped something so heavy on them. He hadn't realized it was going to be a surprise to so many of them. Come on guys. Izuku laughed with a shake of his head in an attempt to lighten the mood. It worked because the moment he broke the silence, the oppressive cloud broke with it. How about I make everybody dinner to celebrate making it through our first day at UA? Oh man, food sounds great. Kirishima cheered. I can help. Uraraka offered. Sure, Izuku nodded. He set off towards the dorms and everyone started to follow behind as if they were just waiting for someone else to go first. I'm really only good at cooking meat, so if you could make a side or two that'd be perfect. Several cheers rang up from the group as they made their way back to the wanted dorms. The promise of food was enough to lighten their spirits, and quickly the group was happily chatting and making predictions of the days to come. A spirited dinner of steak and sweet potatoes later, and the students of Wano were headed up to their rooms for some sleep. Midoriya, Uraraka called as Izuku reached the stairs. Yeah? He asked as he turned around. Uraraka was the last one left in the common room. I just wanted to say that no one is gonna bother you anymore, she told him with a soft smile. It was a really nice smile. It grew suddenly into a big grin. And if they do, you come straight to me. She flexed her arm and grabbed at her bicep. I'll beat them up. All right. Yeah, Izuku nodded, a smile of his own spreading across his face. Thanks. No worries, Midoriya, she laughed. We're friends. That's what friends do. With that, she headed to the girls' side of the dorm and up the stairs. Friends? Huh. Izuku wasn't sure when the last time he had a friend was. He really hoped he didn't mess it up. The next day was the first day of real classes. They had the heroic student schedule. That meant they had a meeting with Aizawa each morning. 2 standard classes immediately following that, a break for lunch, and then heroics lessons in the afternoon. Mondays and Wednesdays, they had math with ectoplasm and English with present Mike. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they had heroic art history with midnight and classic literature with Cementos. Then on Fridays they had a double lesson of quirk science with Nenzu. The morning classes went by super quick. It was a syllabus day, so they went over what the class would be about and then got the rest of the class to relax and wait for the next teacher. After lunch, they all headed back to the classroom and waited for their first heroics lesson. Who do you think our teacher will be? Mina asked loudly. The schedule just said TBA. Kirishima shrugged. Maybe it's some underground hero. I mean, Aizawa's already our coordinator, Izuku pointed out. Wait, he's an underground hero? Kaminari asked. I thought he was just some freaky civilian. My god, Shinso sighed. How are you this dumb? Hey, Kaminari shouted defensively. Aizawa is the Eraserhead, Shinso told him. Eraser who? Mina asked. Eraserhead is considered the most successful underground hero currently active, Izuku explained. He's been working for a little over 10 years and he has over 8,000 arrests. He's taken down drug cartels, trafficking rings, and rumor has it he even took down a government coup before it could get off the ground. What? Uraraka gasped. How come we've never heard of him then? You're not a successful underground hero if everybody's heard of you, Shinso said with a shake of his head. Then why'd you give me such a hard time? Kaminari asked defensively. Because we're not just random anybodies, Shinso explained. We're supposed to be heroes in training. And that means a certain level of research into the field of heroics. I am. A voice called loudly from the hallway and cut off their conversation. The door slammed open and revealed All Might in his Silver Age costume, coming through the door like a regular person. There were gasps and cheers as All Might strutted into the room and up to the podium. It was clear that everyone was blown away that All Might, the #1 hero, was going to be teaching them. There was a lot of excitement in the room, but for Izuku it caused a knot to form in his stomach. He was excited, sure, but seeing All Might in person, the only thing he could think about was the giant wound on the man's side and the ticking clock he was fighting against. The haunting scent of stale blood that filled the room definitely didn't help. Welcome to your first heroic informatics lesson, All Might laughed. You can and should think of this class as Heroics 101. Here you will learn the basics of every branch of heroics, from villain capture to disaster relief. Today we'll be starting with. All Might proudly posed with a thick card that read Battle in big red letters. Battle, All Might shouted. Cheers rang through the classroom once again. Izuku hardened his resolve and took a deep breath. This was it. But you can't be a hero dressed like that. All Might joked. He brought out a remote with a big button on it. The thing looked fake with how cliché it was. Pushing it, he revealed 20 hidden cubbies on the wall, each holding a silver case. You need your costumes, made to your exact specifications as sent in with your applications. Now put these on and meet me at Training Room B. Izuku rushed with the others, grabbed his costume, and hurried to the locker room. His costume was pretty simple. It was a dark green jumpsuit that had a hole for his tail. He skipped gloves so that he would have his claws readily accessible. He skipped a hood or mask since his ears made them uncomfortable and difficult. He also skipped shoes. Izuku didn't have paws, but his feet weren't exactly normal. They were tougher on the bottom, and stronger too. He had claws on his toes the same way he had them on his fingers. He could wear shoes fine, but he always felt a little more comfortable barefoot. Since his costume was so simple, he was the first one ready and at the training room. The room was set up with familiar blue sparring mats. All Might stood in the middle of a circle that was printed in the center of the mats. As Izuku walked in, All Might gave him a smile. "It's nice to see you again, young Midoriya." He cheered happily. "It's nice to see you again too, sir," Izuku replied with a small bow. Now, no need for such formality," All Might laughed. He looked Izuku up and down with a big smile. "It's good to know you took my advice to heart." "Yes, sir," Izuku nodded. He rubbed the back of his head a little embarrassed. All Might was complimenting him. It was good advice. All Might laughed at that. "Hardly, my boy," he told Izuku as he patted his shoulder. "And yet you took it and made yourself into quite the young hero hopeful. I look forward to seeing you grow even further." "Thank you," Izuku bowed. Other students started showing up and All Might would greet each one of them and complimented their costume. It made the interaction Izuku had just had with the hero stand out all the more. Izuku felt a bubbling warmth inside himself knowing that All Might was keeping a special eye on him. He wasn't going to let him down. Hitoshi was prepared for a lot of things when he'd been accepted into the hero course. A constant uphill battle that his quirk was ill-suited for. Check. A class full of people whose quirks he would have killed for. Check. To find out that other people with heroic and powerful quirks, even the strongest guy in their class, had been facing the same type of bullshit he'd faced his entire life. No, he wasn't expecting that. So maybe Hitoshi was rethinking his opinions on some of his classmates. He and Shoji had been hanging close to each other anyways. Both of them, and Koda as well. They all preferred more of a watch-and-stay-silent approach to dealing with the rest of the class. It was working out well. Maybe he wouldn't have called Shoji a friend. But then again, Hitoshi had never exactly had any friends before to compare their relationship to. Walking into Gym B, Hitoshi found lots of his classmates already there. He adjusted the voice modulator on his neck nervously. It had been a pain to put on. Hopefully it was made the way he asked. Otherwise it would interfere with his quirk and be as good as useless. His classmates' costumes ranged from simple to weird. Honestly, he wasn't sure why Todoroki thought covering himself in fake ice with a demon eye was a good idea. He got a good laugh out of watching Midoriya and Uraraka blush and stammer about each other's costumes. It was cute, in an "I wonder how long that'll take to happen" kind of way. "They say that the clothes make the pros," All Might laughed. "And you boys and girls certainly look the part now. Remember that from this day forth, you are truly heroes in training." "Sir," Ada shouted loudly as his hand shot into the air. "The gym seems to be set up for sparring. Is that what we'll be doing today?" "Got it in one, young Ada." All Might winked. "We're gonna start off simple so that I can get an idea of your combat abilities. Not everyone is going to be at the same level, and that's all right. This exercise will let me know what areas everyone needs to work on." "But won't those with more combat-ready quirks naturally excel in this exercise?" Yaoyorozu asked. "Yes and no," All Might nodded. "You see, each student will spar twice, first without their quirk, and then again with it." Fuck, Hitoshi cursed internally. How was he supposed to stand a chance without his quirk? Though his opponent would be fighting quirkless too, he supposed. He might be able to put up a fight. Looking around at his classmates, several of whom were incredibly large, he wondered if that were even true. "All Might," Midoriya called as he raised his hand. "Yes, young Midoriya," All Might called. "What about those of us with quirks we can't turn off?" he asked. "There are still aspects of your quirks that you can and should be able to fight without," All Might explained. "For yourself, being able to fight without your claws will certainly be necessary as a hero. But what about my strength?" Midoriya pushed. "Should I just hold back?" Midoriya had increased strength. It made sense now that he thought about it, but honestly, he'd just assumed the guy was a beast. I mean, he was literally made of muscles. The only student who was beefier was Sato. "As well as you can, yes," All Might nodded. "Do not worry too much though if it proves difficult." "That's not exactly fair to the rest of us," Kaminari grumbled. Hitoshi nodded in silent agreement. "Worry not, young Kaminari," All Might assured him. "For you won't be sparring with your classmates. Rather, you will be sparring against me." There were a number of reactions at that. Kirishima got super excited. Kaminari shrieked in dread, echoing Hitoshi's own internal reaction. Hitoshi couldn't help but notice Midoriya set his shoulders and raise his chin. God, the fool must think he stands a chance. "We'll be doing 5-minute sparring matches to ensure everyone gets an opportunity in the ring," All Might told them. "Your goal is to render me unconscious, make it so that I'm no longer able to move, or force me out of the ring. Is this even fair?" Mina asked. "No," All Might laughed. "But it is a hero's job to overcome difficulty. You can consider this your first bump in the road." With that, they got started. All Might called Ada into the ring first. The first round was intense. Ada's fighting style focused heavily on kicks and he was clearly very experienced. But All Might caught each of his attacks with little issue. After 5 minutes, All Might called the match. In the second round, Ada was a blur. His kicks were so fast that Hitoshi could hardly believe it. All Might had no trouble keeping up though. Just like the last round, the hero caught each of Ida's kicks with a smile on his face. Student after student went against their teacher. Not one of them managed to faze him. Kaminari even managed to take himself out in the second round by overusing his quirk. Yaoyorozu's second round, All Might just caught the barbs of her taser before they could even hit him. The last 3 to go were Todoroki, Midoriya, and Hitoshi. Todoroki. All Might called as Shoji headed out of the ring. "You're up." Todoroki stoically headed into the ring and faced off against All Might. The atmosphere of this fight was immediately different from the others. The second All Might started the first round, Todoroki attacked. He was ferocious. It didn't mean he managed to do anything, but it was still intense to watch. The second round was even worse. Todoroki started the match with an enormous wave of ice. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Hitoshi was able to see his breath. The literal glacier raced towards All Might, but the hero just laughed. He swatted the ice wall and shattered it into a million pieces. Todoroki sent attack after attack at All Might, each time the ice moving a little slower, reaching a little less high. All Might swatted them all away. At the end of the 5 minutes, Todoroki and most of the other students were shivering. "Quite impressive, young Todoroki." All Might complimented as Todoroki stomped away. "Young Shinso, you're up next." Hitoshi sighed, but he got up and headed into the ring. He stood across from the massive hero and dreaded what was about to happen. "Start," All Might called as he pushed a button on his watch. Hitoshi scrambled forward. He did his best to stay low and underneath All Might's guard. When he threw his punch, predictably, All Might caught it. "Careful, young Shinso," All Might coached. "Keep your wrists straight or you'll hurt yourself." Hitoshi's face burned. All Might hadn't corrected anyone else in any of the matches. Was Hitoshi really that much behind? He pulled back his fist as quick as he could and tried to kick All Might in the side. All Might blocked the kick with his forearm. This time he didn't give Hitoshi any advice at least. The 5 minutes were brutal. By the time All Might's watch beeped, Hitoshi's fists and shins and ankles ached, his muscles burned, and he was gasping for every breath. "Good job." All Might commended him as he took a step back and put some distance between them. "Would you like a minute to rest before we get started on the next round?" No, Hitoshi shook his head. He wasn't going to be weak. No one else had taken a break. He sure as hell wasn't going to. "Very well," All Might nodded. He put his hand over the watch again. "Then begin." "Wait, All Might," Hitoshi panted. "Can I ask you something?" All Might just nodded his head. "So you do know my quirk then?" Hitoshi sighed. "Well, there's not much I can do then, huh?" All Might simply shrugged. "Oh well," Hitoshi said. "Can I forfeit the round? I don't really feel like having a one-sided conversation for the next 5 minutes." All Might nodded. Hitoshi bit the inside of his cheek. He was hoping to catch All Might with one of the questions, but it seemed he was too cautious for that. "Fine," Hitoshi grunted. "I forfeit." With that, he turned and slouched out of the ring. There were a handful of polite applause, but they really only served to annoy him. Now that his match was over, all the anticipation had been replaced with exhaustion. Maybe he could just sleep through the last match. Last but not least, young Midoriya. All Might called. "Right." Midoriya nodded as he stood up. He rolled his shoulders as he entered the ring. He gave All Might a bow, one which the hero returned, and then the two of them entered ready stances. "Ready when you are, sir." "Good." All Might chuckled. "Now remember, no claws. And try and limit your strength in any other aspects of your quirk too." "Yes, sir." Midoriya nodded. All Might pushed the start button on his watch and Midoriya rushed forward. The claws on his feet scratched at the mats as he ran. All Might met him head on. The two of them locked hands and entered into a battle of strength. Only neither one seemed to be putting that much effort into the push. Both of them had big unconcerned grins on their faces. "I never said I intended to hold back." All Might laughed. "I didn't expect you to." Midoriya smirked. Midoriya rolled backwards, dragging All Might with him as he did. Amazingly, All Might actually seemed caught off guard. He fell forward over Midoriya. As Midoriya's back hit the mat, he put both of his feet directly into All Might's abdomen and shoved. All Might was thrown clear over the wolf boy and just past the line of the circle. All Might landed in a crouch, but he was most definitely out. There was a single moment of silence as the class stared. No one else had so much as made All Might take a single step, even when using their quirks to their fullest. Yet there was no denying what they were seeing. The silence broke as the students burst into crazy applause around Hitoshi. "Ha ha." All Might cheered as he jumped to his feet. "Wonderful. Holy shit." Kirishima screamed. "Language." Ida reprimanded him. "Did that really just happen?" Kirishima continued unabashed. "Indeed it did." All Might confirmed with a joyous laugh. What a wonderful display of skill by young Midoriya. Midoriya, for his part, had a blush burning across his face as he scratched at the back of his head. It wasn't that big a deal, he defended himself. Honestly, it just pissed Hitoshi off more. On the contrary, All Might shook his head. It was quite a big deal. But can anyone tell me how he did it? He used his quirk, Hitoshi growled. He switched to his full strength and caught you off guard. No, All Might laughed. While young Midoriya did display some impressive strength, it was no more than an average person of his stature would be able to manage. Hitoshi's eyebrows knit together further. He used your strength and weight against you, Ajiro called out. Indeed, All Might nodded. By entering into a pushing match, he got me to work with him rather than against him. When he fell backwards, my weight was already leaning forward, making my fall a nearly certain thing. Then he used his own strength to give me the push necessary to knock me out of bounds once I was in the air and no longer able to resist him. You were cocky, Todoroki scowled. I was, All Might agreed, and young Midoriya took advantage of that fact. Getting a read on your opponent and making the most of any advantage is vital in a fight. So does Midori even have to do a second round? Mina asked. I mean, he won without his quirk. He did, but that was not the point of the exercise, All Might pointed out. I still need to get an understanding for Midoriya's full strength. There were some murmurs and excited comments at the idea of seeing Midoriya, the guy who had just beat All Might, going all out. Hitoshi wasn't of the same mindset. The two of them took positions on opposite sides of the ring. When All Might pressed the button to start the match, Midoriya was gone in a blur of motion. The next thing Hitoshi saw was the blur of red as All Might was thrown across the ring. He got his feet under him in time to land inside the ring this time. He stood there rubbing at his wrists with a laugh. Those claws of yours are quite sharp, All Might called out. You've been shown to be highly resistant to knives and swords, Midoriya shrugged. He was crouched on the other side of the ring from the hero, his claws cutting into the mat. Midoriya rushed forward again and grabbed All Might by the shoulders. All Might just stood there as Midoriya tried to drag him down. All Might stumbled forward a single step, but this time he didn't fall. Midoriya hooked one of his feet around All Might's forward foot, but despite his tugging he didn't affect All Might at all. Midoriya leapt back with a ferocious snarl. Hitoshi stared at the boy in shock. He'd never heard anything like that from another human being. Midoriya didn't wait long before making his next move though. He rushed forward once again, his hands lowered by his side as he charged. Get him, Midori, Mina cheered. There were several others who echoed with their own encouragement. It was the first time anyone dared to shout out during a match. Midoriya took a ferocious swipe, claws out, at All Might's side. The hero just sidestepped the attack. Midoriya swiped again and again, but All Might dodged or swatted away each of his blows. Midoriya suddenly switched it up with a leap over the hero. He grabbed the hero's head while he was still in the air, trying to throw him. But All Might barely budged. Midoriya ended up dangling behind All Might, his feet not even touching the ground as he held onto All Might's jaw. All Might just stood there and laughed. Midoriya dropped to the floor behind All Might and kicked out the back of the hero's knee. All Might actually dropped halfway to the ground before he caught himself in a crouch. Midoriya grabbed All Might around the waist and lifted the hero up. With a wild cry, Midoriya threw himself backwards, suplexing All Might down into the ground, and right past the boundary line. The class didn't wait this time as they immediately went absolutely wild. All Might stood up straight with a big grin and waited for the class to quiet down. It took a hot minute as everyone continued freaking out around Hitoshi about Midoriya's victory. God, to think that this was the guy that had claimed he was bully. As if someone with a quirk strong enough to fight All Might and win. Only an idiot would believe that he'd faced any kind of discrimination. No, Hitoshi and Midoriya couldn't have been more different. Midoriya had the perfect quirk. He was strong, he was fast, he was deadly in a fight. Midoriya was born to be a hero. But Hitoshi wasn't just going to lie down and give up because another cocky asshole had shown up. No, he was going to prove he was just as good as Midoriya. I still can't believe you beat All Might. Mina laughed as she sat down next to Midori on the couch. It was becoming somewhat of a common occurrence for her to find him and sit next to him. They'd come back after their first day of hero training. Everyone was exhausted as they trudged off to their rooms to shower. Mina had wandered back down after a nice long rinse and found Midori and Raka sitting on the couch together. I didn't really beat him though, Midori shook his head. Not like in a fight or anything. It was just a training exercise. I'm sorry, did you see anyone else throw the number one hero out of the ring? Mina asked him with a smirk. And no, Midori stammered. God, he was awfully cute for such a beefcake. But it isn't that big a deal. I mean, I'm just used to that type of sparring. What do you mean? Raka asked. Well, I've been learning judo for a few years now, Midori explained. The exercise was a lot like a sparring match. Ajiro's costume was a literal gi. Mina rolled her eyes. Midori, just shut up and take the compliment. All right, Izuku nodded. Cut him some slack, Mina, Raka laughed. At least he's not shouting his own praises and insulting everyone. That's fair, Mina nodded. She stretched her arms out to the side as she gave a big yawn. Jesus Christ, I'm beat though. I wouldn't have thought 10 minutes of effort could leave me this tired. That's a good thing though, Midori pointed out. It means you didn't hold back and really gave it your all in your fight. Yeah, Raka cheered. Geez, you two are too pure for this world. Mina groaned as she slumped back onto the couch. She looked up and found Midori and Raka blushing and avoiding looking at each other. So Midori. Yeah. Izuku cleared his throat. When are you gonna take Raka on a date? She asked nonchalantly. The effect was instant. Both cinnamon rolls instantly had giant blushes on their faces. Uraraka was blubbering something incomprehensible while she was looking away. Midori, for his part, had a slightly more serious face on. I don't know, he shook his head, the blush still burning strong. I've never been on a date before. Wait, what? Mina shouted. Uraraka was looking at him again. A look of shock Mina was sure mirrored her own on Uraraka's face. Izuku shrugged. Not many girls wanted to go on a date with the mutant freak, he explained. That's ridiculous, Uraraka exclaimed. I mean, you're so kind and strong and cute. I mean, who wouldn't want a date? Uraraka cut off as both of their blushes deepened to the deepest shade of red Mina had ever seen on human beings. She couldn't help but laugh. All right then, Mina said through her giggles. I guess it'll be up to Uraraka to take you on a date then. She can show you how it's done. What? Both of them gasped as they turned back to Mina. How does tomorrow after school sound? Mina asked Midori. I mean, I'm not doing anything, Midori answered half-dazed. Perfect, Mina nodded. She'll meet you in the common room a half hour after class gets out. I will. Uraraka wondered. Yep, Mina laughed. She grabbed Uraraka by the hand. Come on, we gotta plan your date. She turned and waved over her shoulder. Bye, Midori. You can thank me later. Izuku was a bundle of nerves. His foot wouldn't stop tapping and he'd nearly bitten through his bottom lip with his fangs. He had his first date ever later and he had no idea what to do. What was he supposed to wear? What was he supposed to say to Uraraka throughout the day? Was it all some mean joke? No, Izuku shook his head. Mina was playful, but he didn't think she was cruel. She and Uraraka were his friends. Well, maybe Uraraka was something more. Or was she about to be? Gah, this was all so complicated. Whatcha thinking about? Mina asked playfully as she sat across from Izuku in the cafeteria. And nothing, Izuku stammered. Mina said, her voice dripping with sarcastic agreement. You shouldn't worry so much, Midori. You'll do great. Before Izuku could come up with anything else to say in his own defense, Mina waved Uraraka and Tsuyu over to join them. Hey, Midoriya. Uraraka greeted him with a cheerful smile. Her permanent blush might have been slightly deeper than normal, but it was hard to tell for sure. Hey, Uraraka. Izuku returned with a smile. What's got you so nervous, Midoriya? Tsuyu asked as she sat down beside him. I mean, more so than usual. He's got a date tonight, Mina informed her with a broad smile. That's surprising, Tsuyu commented bluntly. What? Uraraka gasped. Why? Midoriya already explained yesterday, Tsuyu told her. People with mutation quirks are often seen as being gross or less human. Most of us end up in relationships with other mutants. Look at my parents, for example. They have very similar frog and toad quirks, seeing as the only girls with heavy mutations are me and Mina. And since I doubt Mina would have phrased it the way she did if she was the one going on a date with him, and I know I don't have a date with him, it's surprising. So, who is your date with, Midoriya? Shoji. No, Izuku shook his head. It's with Uraraka. Tsuyu turned back to the Uraraka, the same blank expression on her face. That is surprising then, she said. You didn't really think I'd think that about you guys, did you? Uraraka asked softly. Everyone else has. Tsuyu shrugged nonchalantly. Don't take it to heart, Raka, Mina assured her with a smile. I'm glad you're not like everyone else. But our class isn't like that, Uraraka insisted. No, they aren't, Izuku agreed. But it takes some getting used to. Well, then I'm gonna make sure you guys get used to it, Uraraka declared almost angrily. Izuku couldn't help but stare at her, his eyes blown just a little wider. You don't ever have to feel that way around me because your quirks don't make you any different. Thanks, Raka. Mina laughed as she wrapped one arm around Uraraka in a side hug. Suddenly, a blaring alarm began ringing through the cafeteria. It was so loud that Izuku's ears ached. They naturally slid back against his head to try and drown out the sound. The smell of fear began mixing with the food smell in the cafeteria. This is a level 3 security breach, an electronic voice blared over the alarm. All students, please make your way to the nearest secure room. As the voice finished, a solid metal sheet slammed down over the cafeteria doors and the alarm quieted down to a reasonable level. Students rushed to the doors and banged against them, but they didn't budge. I guess we're stuck here, Mina sighed. Yeah, Izuku nodded as he pinched his nose closed. Midoriya, Uraraka asked. What's wrong? People are scared, Izuku told her. The smell can be a little overpowering. You can smell fear, Mina asked excitedly. What else can you smell? A lot, Izuku chuckled, his voice sounding a little funny due to his plugged nose. That must get annoying, Tsuyu commented. Izuku shrugged. It wasn't his favorite thing in the world, but it was useful at times. Plus, he was pretty sure he got to enjoy a depth within good smells that no one else did. And at time his mom made katsudon, the smell of the meat and spices would linger for days, driving his appetite through the roof but putting him in a good mood all the same. How long do you think we'll be stuck here? Uraraka wondered. No clue, Mina answered as she picked up her chopsticks. No point stressing about it though. Let's eat. So the four of them sat in the cafeteria and ate their lunches. Eventually everybody calmed down and lunch went on despite the fact that they were trapped. An hour later and the shutters raised themselves and the students returned to their classes, nervous and only a little worse for wear. Ochako was so nervous. Was she really doing this? Mina had come in like a hurricane and magically gotten her a date. A date with Midoriya, the cute boy who had saved her and who was so sweet. Tsuyu, Mina called as they made their way back into the dorms after their afternoon lesson. Her voice dragged Ochako out of her thoughts. Will you go give Raka a hand getting ready? I'm gonna go help Midori pick out an outfit. Of course, Tsuyu nodded. Why can't I pick out my own outfit? Midoriya asked defensively. Oh no, Mina rounded on him. I've seen what you wear around the dorms. No way am I letting you go out on a date in cargo shorts. What's wrong with cargo shorts? Midoriya tilted his head. Mina groaned and dragged him away, lecturing him on how unflattering baggy clothing was. Well, Tsuyu said, guess we better head up too. Right. Ochako nodded as she turned back to the girls' side of the dorm. She led Tsuyu up the stairs herself. Me and Mina already picked out the outfit I was gonna wear last night. That's good, Tsuyu commented. I can help with makeup then. I don't know that I want to wear too much, Ochako warned her. That's fine, Tsuyu agreed. I never wear much anyways, so a natural look should be easy. Ochako led Tsuyu into her room. She hadn't had much to decorate it with, just a few photos from home really. She had a single poster of Ryukyu up on her wall. The skirt and blouse combo she and Mina had picked out was spread across her bed. What's this? Tsuyu asked as she picked up the bottle of perfume Mina had tossed next to the outfit. Oh, Mina thought I should wear some perfume, Ochako explained. Said it was romantic. You can't wear this, Tsuyu shook her head. What? Ochako half laughed in shock. Why not? Go ahead and get dressed, Tsuyu instructed. I'll be right back. With that she left the room. Ochako stared after her for a moment. With a shake of her head she decided not to worry about it and got to work getting dressed. She was just finishing hanging back up her UA uniform when Tsuyu came back into the room. She had a strange glass jar with her. It had a stopper in the top which instantly made Ochako think it was fancier than anything she'd ever owned. Tsuyu stepped forward and removed the stopper, putting the jar beneath Ochako's nose. Smell this, Tsuyu told her. Ochako was confused, but she went ahead and took a sniff of the jar. Its smell was fairly faint. Not anything like what she expected. Faint as it was still sweet. It smelled like flowers. What is it? Ochako asked. It's rosewater, Tsuyu told her. It isn't as strong as a normal perfume and it won't last as long. But with Midoriya's sensitive nose he'll probably enjoy this more. That's genius, Ochako exclaimed. How did you think of that? I can taste chemicals in the air, Tsuyu said as if it wasn't a crazy ability to just drop into casual conversation. I don't imagine it's as useful as Midoriya's sense of smell, but it can be really annoying, especially when someone is wearing too much perfume. My mom bought me this to use instead, but most people can't even smell it so there's no point. Thank you, Tsu, Ochako gushed as she threw her arms around her. This is perfect. Don't worry about it, Tsuyu waved her off. Ochako stepped back and found Tsuyu with the same blank expression she normally wore. But Uraraka, I need to warn you about something. What is it? Ochako asked with a tilt of her head. Tsuyu's normally stoic expression furrowed into a slight frown, her lips pouting out ever so slightly as her brow knit together. You should know that us mutants learn from a young age that we have to stick together, Tsuyu explained. She fixed Ochako with her eyes, a firm glare in them that she hadn't been expecting. If you hurt Midoriya, you're going to make a lot of enemies. Ochako gulped past the knot in her throat. All right, she nodded. Izuku was a little annoyed. Not only had Mina insisted he wear jeans on his date, but she had also thrown out all of his cargo shorts. When he tried to stop her, she just started to melt them with her acid. They were all ruined. He had other types of shorts, but come on. Cargo shorts were great. Or at least that's what he had thought until Mina had ranted for over 10 minutes about how awful they made a guy look. How was he ever going to wear them again without thinking about the fact that they made him look short and fat? Now he was waiting in the common room. He was trying not to mess with the collar of the button-up shirt Mina had grabbed from his closet. He liked the pink shirt, but he hadn't ever actually worn it before. It was kinda itchy. The practically unworn pair of brown loafers weren't all that comfy either. A sweet smell hit Izuku's nose and he turned to the stairs. Normally he could smell someone coming by the brand of deodorant and shampoo they wore. God forbid anyone was wearing perfume or cologne. He'd have the scent in his nose for hours and a headache accompanying it. This was different though. It was like they were carrying a bouquet of flowers. There on the steps of the girl's side was Uraraka. She was wearing a black skirt and a white blouse. She looked really nice. The smell of flowers was wafting off of her and filling the whole room with the aroma. Izuku stood up and did his best to straighten his shirt. Suddenly he was very glad that he wasn't dressed in cargo shorts. He felt like he could actually look all right next to her. Uraraka walked over, her permanent blush growing as she got close. You look good, they said at the same time. Izuku felt his own cheeks heat up slightly as they both laughed at the blunder. "Thank you," he said as he scratched the back of his head. "No problem." Uraraka shook her head. She seemed so nervous. Izuku's stomach dropped as he realized something. "I'm sorry if Mina forced all of this on you," he told her. He tried to keep his voice light and casual. It still sounded tight and full of tension to his ears. "We don't have to go if you don't want to." "What? No," Uraraka exclaimed with a violent wave of her hands in front of her. "I mean, of course." It's okay, Uraraka," Izuku told her with a soft smile. "I won't be hurt if you don't want to." "I want to," Uraraka insisted. "So Midoriya, will you go on a date with me?" Izuku stared at her in surprise. She smiled up at him and Izuku's mouth went dry. "Why yeah," he nodded. "Good," Uraraka said with a single firm nod. She grabbed Izuku's hand and began dragging him out of the dorm. "'Cause I'm really excited." Uraraka brought him to a little hole-in-the-wall noodle shop. It was amazingly good for the low cost. They had each paid for their own bowls and had just sat down together at one of the tables set up outside along the street. The street wasn't very busy, so it made for a nice quiet place to eat. "Wow, Midoriya," Uraraka laughed as she looked at his bowl. "That's a lot of meat." "Yeah," Izuku chuckled nervously. "My quirk means I process meat better than I do most other foods, so I've got to eat a lot of it." "That makes sense," Uraraka nodded. "So that's why you make such good steak." "Yeah," Izuku said. "Though really I could eat it raw and be just as happy." "What?" Uraraka gasped. "No way. You can eat raw meat." Izuku confirmed as he took another bite of pork. He swallowed before he continued. He could feel the grin splitting his face as he prepared to drop the next bomb of information on her. "It actually tastes better that way." "No," Uraraka asked jokingly with a shake of her head. "It's true," Izuku laughed. "It's almost sweet." "That's so cool," Uraraka told him. Izuku smiled and took a big bite of his food. The meat was perfectly seasoned and really tender. The broth was salty and just a little spicy. It was delicious. Uraraka across from him also took a moment to enjoy her meal. She'd gotten a simple miso ramen, but it looked just as good as his. So Izuku hated that the moment was ruined by his heightened hearing. "God, look at that poor girl," a guy at the table behind him commented under his breath. "I know," a feminine voice added just as softly. "Do you think he's forcing her to eat with him?" "He must be," the guy agreed. "Why else would someone eat with something like that?" "Is everything okay, Midoriya?" Uraraka asked and brought his attention back to their date. "Why yeah," Izuku lied, but it didn't matter. "Hey freak," the guy behind them commented loudly. "Why don't you just leave her alone already?" The look of shock on Uraraka's face hurt more than the comment itself did. He was used to this type of thing, but it was unfair to drag her into it too. With a sigh, Izuku turned around. At the table behind them sat a guy and a girl. The guy had shoulder-length black hair and a long pointed nose. Izuku wondered if it had to do with his quirk. He was scowling at Izuku with a look of disgust. The girl had brunette hair and a high pony and a smug look on her face. "We're just trying to enjoy some food," Izuku reasoned calmly. "Yeah, well you're making it harder for the rest of us," the girl cut in harshly. "You stink like a wet dog." Izuku felt the ears on his head go back in discomfort. "Oh, look at that," the guy scoffed. He got up from his table. He wasn't all that tall, but he was well built. "He's threatening us." "No," Izuku denied with a shake of his head. "You know what they say you have to do with a misbehaving dog?" the girl sneered. "Beat it till it knows who's boss." The guy laughed cruelly. Izuku held up his hands defensively. "Jesus Christ, look at those things," the girl gasped as she pointed at his claws. "Stop it," Uraraka screamed from behind them. Everyone turned around to see her staring with a look of pure rage on her face. Izuku had never seen her look so mad before. "Are you fucking kidding me right now?" "Uraraka," Izuku said, trying to calm her down. "No," she snapped at him. "I cannot believe the absolute bigoted bullshit I've just heard." "Look lady," the guy huffed flippantly, "just because you've got some weird fetish. Uraraka cut him off harshly. "Need to grow the fuck up and get your head out of your ass. If you think you're half the man Izuku is, then you're fucking kidding yourself." She turned sharply to the woman. "And you need to cut the crap and realize that you're judging another human being on something so shallow as how they look." The guy had a look of shock on his face, but the girl seemed ready to fight. Izuku couldn't let that happen. He and Uraraka were training to be heroes. That could all be thrown away if they got into a fight with civilians, even if they weren't the ones to start it. If the cops even listened to their side at all. "Come on, Uraraka," Izuku said. He grabbed her hand and dragged her away from the restaurant. He could feel her try and pull away, but he couldn't let her. He didn't run, but he did keep a fairly quick pace. The woman shouted obscenities at them as they went. Izuku didn't stop until they made it to a nearby park. He dropped Uraraka's hand and sighed as he plopped down on a bench. He rested his head in his hands and tried to ignore the scowl he could feel digging into him. "Why did you do that?" Uraraka demanded. Izuku looked up to see her standing in front of him with her hands on her hips. The scowl he had known was there hurt even worse when he could see it. "I wasn't done. If it had gotten much more intense, someone would have called the cops," he explained. "Good," Uraraka huffed. Then we could have filed a complaint. Or they would have arrested me, Izuku countered, his voice sounding almost desperate, but he wasn't sure why. Arrested you? Uraraka asked angrily. Why would they have arrested you? Because I was the only mutant there, Izuku told her. That's how that encounter goes. The cops show up and maybe they listen, or maybe they just act. They see a dangerous mutant who can't turn off their quirk and they rush to get them under control. That's ridiculous, Uraraka insisted. Yeah, Izuku sighed with a nod. Thought he could hear the exhaustion in his voice. The tension in his shoulders only added to his misery. But that's how it is. So what, you're just supposed to stand there and let them assault you? Uraraka questioned. Kinda, Izuku shrugged. We would have left before it went that far. But we shouldn't have to, Uraraka pushed. You shouldn't have to. Izuku smiled at her. She was so angry, but it just made his heart squeeze in his chest. Oh crap, Uraraka gasped. She sat down next to him and put a hand on his arm. I'm sorry. Please don't cry. I'm not mad at you. I know, Izuku laughed as he wiped at the tears. It's just that you're so nice. I don't think anyone has ever fought for me like that, and it's not fair that you have to deal with it because of me. Don't say that, Uraraka told him gently. This wasn't your fault. I know, Izuku nodded. He gave her what he assumed was a teary-eyed smile. Thanks, of course, Midoriya, Uraraka said softly. We're friends, Izuku, he corrected her. What? She asked. Back at the noodle shop, he chuckled. You called me Izuku. If you want, you can keep using it. Oh okay, Uraraka nodded, her blush growing slightly. But then you call me Ochako. Deal? Deal, Izuku agreed. He was sure it was the emotional exhaustion that was letting this all come so easily. I'm sorry I ruined our date. You didn't ruin anything, Ochako assured him. So don't go feeling guilty about it. All right, Izuku sighed. But I'll buy next time. And next time, Ochako squeaked. If you want there to be a next time. Izuku shrugged. Yeah, she nodded hurriedly. Me too, Izuku grinned as he leaned his head back a little further. The sky was already growing orange as the sunset approached. What do you say we head back to the dorms for now though? I think I'm ready to be back. Sounds good, Ochako agreed. The walk back to the dorms was really peaceful. The sun set behind them, throwing long shadows across the streets and giving the whole city an orange glow. A few dark clouds were rolling in, but nothing too major. They held hands as they walked. Izuku thought it would prove difficult, what with his claws and her quirk, but it was so natural. Izuku's soft grasp meant his claws barely pressed against her skin, and Ochako kept her little finger extended. Both of them so used to the accommodations their quirks required that it was second nature. The conversation came a little easier between them as they fell into the rhythm of the walk. They didn't really talk about anything of consequence, just light stuff about their classes and their dormmates. When they finally made it the campus gate, it was already dark. The clouds blocked any light the moonlight would normally provide, leaving only the dull glow of the street lamps to light the gate. I had a really nice time, Izuku, Ochako told him. Me too, Izuku nodded as he turned to her. She looked so beautiful, her eyes reflecting the streetlights around them. The smell of flowers still lingered around her. They were nearly a foot apart, but it was like he'd put his nose in a rosebush. He mustered up all the courage he could, ignoring the first few raindrops as they fell on his shoulders. I'm gonna try something new, he said, and then he leaned forward and gave her a quick kiss. He pulled back just as quickly. It was barely even a peck on the lips. She had a shocked look on her face that instantly had Izuku panicking. Crap, he must have pushed things too fast. Well, this was fun, he rushed out as he turned back to the gate. That was her first kiss, Uraraka shouted behind him. Izuku hurried his steps as he tried to run away from his embarrassment. He only made it a few feet before Uraraka caught his hand and spun him around. Before he knew what was happening, her lips were on his and they were kissing again. But Uraraka didn't pull away, and after a moment of shock, Izuku closed his eyes and melted into the kiss. It was like time stopped. In that one perfect moment, everything else fell away. Nothing else mattered. Ochako's soft lips were against his as she held onto his hand. Her warmth radiated through him like he was next to a fire, contrasting sharply against the cold rain that gently fell on them both as they stood there locked together. All too soon, Ochako pulled away. Izuku felt like he was floating. She looked him square in the eye, a smile across her face, a smile that sparkled with mischief and confidence, and Izuku would do anything to see again. He was so enraptured he almost missed the words she spoke. That, she told him as she fixed him with a firm look, the smirk still clear on her lips as she poked him in the chest. Was your first kiss. Got it. Okay, Izuku nodded dumbly. He felt a million miles away. Uraraka laughed. The sound made Izuku's stomach flutter. The smile on her face was breathtaking. She slipped her hand in his and led him back to the dorm. Aizawa slouched into the room just as their heroics lesson was due to begin. Sensei, Ida declared as he rose from his seat. Is everything okay with All Might? I was not aware we would be having a substitute today. You aren't, Aizawa answered. I'm here to bring you to a training facility on the other side of campus. You'll be doing rescue exercises with myself, All Might, and another teacher overseeing you. Thank you, sir. Ida nodded and sat back down. Aizawa pulled out a remote and pushed the button to reveal their hero costumes. Put on your costumes and meet me out front, he continued. We'll be taking a bus to the facility. With that, Aizawa left and the students rushed after him. They quickly made it out front, where they waited for the bus. Ada tried to arrange them by seat order, but the open seating of the bus meant it really didn't amount to much. At least not much besides making it so Izuku and Ochako weren't sitting together. He ended up between Tsuyu and Sato though, which wasn't so bad. So how was your date, Midoriya? Tsuyu asked bluntly. Wait, Midoriya went on a date. Kirishima butted in. He had a big sheet-eating grin on his face that showed off all of his pointed teeth. Yeah, Izuku nodded with a nervous laugh. Last night. It's like the third day, dude, Kaminari laughed. How'd you manage to get a girl already? Or wait, was it with like a high school girlfriend? Oh, Izuku stammered. It was with Uraraka, Tsuyu told them. Heads whipped around to look back at Uraraka where she was sitting with Mina. Her blush grew a little deeper as she ducked down into the seat. Mina had a big grin on her face. So, did you have a nice time? Tsuyu asked again. Yeah, Izuku nodded. He tried to focus entirely on her and ignore the fact that everyone else was listening. It was great. Are you guys like a couple now? Kaminari jumped in again. I don't know, Izuku stammered as he turned to the electric blonde. He looked back at Ochako, but she was completely hidden behind the seat in front of her. I guess me and Ochako still need to talk about that. He heard Mina lean down and whisper to Ochako. First names already, she teased. It was just a first date. There's plenty of time for that, Tsuyu told him with a pat on the arm. Quiet down, you lot, Aizawa called from the front of the bus. We're here. Everyone looked out the window and saw the building they were approaching. Calling it a building was a bit misleading. The domed ceiling stretched up hundreds of feet, making it look more like a stadium than a training facility. There was a grand staircase leading up to a giant set of concrete doors. As they unloaded from the bus, the enormous doors opened and a hero in a puffy white spacesuit came out. Oh my god, Ochako exclaimed as she grabbed onto Izuku's arm. It's the gentlemanly hero 13. They're my favorite. Why, thank you. 13 laughed as they stopped before the gathered students. Yes, I am 13 and I will be helping with your lesson today. Welcome to the USJ, or the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. Aizawa headed up to 13. Izuku's keen ears let him hear what they were talking about. 13, where's All Might? Aizawa grunted softly. He ran into some trouble on the way in this morning. 13 told him as they held up 3 fingers. Was All Might down to just 3 hours already? Izuku worried his bottom lip. He didn't have time to waste if he was going to help him before it was too late. Before we get started, I have a few things I'd like to go over, 13 announced louder as they turned back to the class. I know you all have already tested the limits of your quirks with Aizawa's quirk apprehension test. Then you got a taste of quirk combat through your sparring exercises with All Might. Today I'll be showing you that your quirks are for more than just fighting. My quirk is called Black Hole, 13 continued. It's a powerful quirk that destroys anything it comes into contact with. Yeah, and you've used it to save hundreds of people all across Japan. Ochako blurted out. Izuku couldn't help but smile. It was really cute to see her fangirl like this. She still hadn't let up the death grip she had on his arm. That's right, 13 nodded. But it could just as easily be used to kill, as could many of your quirks for that matter. I hope that you all look to today's lesson and realize that even the most destructive quirks can be used to save lives. There was some applause and cheers as 13 finished their speech. Come on, you lot, Aizawa called as he began making his way up the stairs. 13 and the students followed after him, 13 slightly ahead of the group. As they passed through the double doors, Izuku looked around at all of the different zones. There were nearly a dozen of them. Everything from fires to floods. 13 laughed as they stepped through the doors. The USJ is a facility of my own design perfect for rescue training of all sorts. Ochako finally let go of his arm and rushed off to look over the banister at the different facilities. Izuku laughed watching her excitement. It made him feel so light inside. So, when the scent of liquor and sweat suddenly filled the USJ, the knot it caused in Izuku's stomach felt all the worse. Professors, Izuku shouted as he turned towards the scent. In the middle of the main plaza, a black swirling vortex was just beginning to open. It grew and grew until it stretched across the entire plaza. An entire army made their way out of the darkness. Izuku could feel the bloodlust rolling through the facility. What's going on? Kirishima asked. Is this part of the training? No, Aizawa grunted. Those are real villains. 2 final villains slipped out of the portal. The first was a man with blue hair and severed hands covering his body. The second was a giant purple creature with a beak and an exposed brain. It didn't even look human. Every instinct in Izuku went on the defensive at the sight of these 2. 13, get the students out of here, Aizawa commanded as he lifted his yellow goggles out of his scarf and put them on. Kaminari, try and contact the school with your quirk. I'll stall them until backup arrives. Izuku bit his lip. Aizawa was an underground hero who specialized in stealth. He wasn't well suited for this type of combat. but he'd done it before. Izuku wasn't going to insult the man by trying to say he couldn't handle it. He just wasn't happy about him going at it alone. We could help, Izuku offered. No, Aizawa snapped. Unless you are left with no other options, you are not to engage. Now get moving. With that, Aizawa leapt from the top of the steps and down into the plaza. He was instantly met with villains. He quickly began taking them down, every blow brutally effective. He was a blur of fists, elbows, kicks, knees, and capture tape that left nothing crumpled and broken bodies behind him. Come on, Izuku, Ochako called. Izuku turned to see that most of the class was already evacuating. He quickly caught up with them as they made their way towards the door. It was going fine until the swirling black portal began opening up in front of them. The Inkai darkness widened until it made a sort of barrier between all of them and the door. Two glowing yellow eyes formed right in the middle of the void. Then a voice came from within. It warbled and waved almost as though it had come from something less than human. Greetings, the voice called. We are the League of Villains and we have come to kill All Might. Izuku's stomach dropped. Kill All Might? They can't be serious. But then again, All Might was already hurt. Maybe they could really do it. I don't see him, the voice continued. But our intelligence said he would be here. Perhaps we can draw him out by killing a few of you children. Get back, kids, 13 called. 13 stepped forward and raised their gloved hand. A little switch on one of the fingers opened up and Izuku could literally see the suction drawing in the air. He could feel it from behind the hero. He could only imagine what it felt like from where the void was. Instantly, large swaths of the misty darkness were sucked into 13's finger. He caught a glimpse of metal and fabric from within the mist that remained before a second void opened up between 13 and the portal. Before anyone could react, another one opened up behind 13 and their own quirk began tearing them apart. 13 closed the finger on their suit as quick as they could, but it was too late. The damage was done and their containment suit was utterly destroyed, not to mention what damage might have been wreaked upon their body. 13 fell down, face first and unmoving. Your work as a rescue hero betrays you, 13, the voice explained politely. Your combat skills are rusty. Yeah, right, Kirishima shouted as he leapt forward. He delivered a single lariat right at where the glint of metal had been earlier. He passed straight through the mist and flew to the other side. I see, so you are observant, the voice sighed. Best to get rid of you golden eggs now then. The swirling portal began to spread out all around them. Izuku's instincts were screaming at him to run. He tried to slip out and pass the portal, but he was in the middle of the group. There was nothing he could do to escape it. Be gone, the voice yelled. The floor fell out from beneath Izuku and he fell into a void of black. Hitoshi was just so done with this day. Rescue training was already going to be hard enough. Not exactly a lot his quirk could do to put out a fire or move rubble off a person. And then they just had to go and get attacked by villains. So yeah, he wasn't exactly having a good time. He fell out of the portal and straight into a giant pool of ice-cold water. He didn't even have time to take a breath, so now he was struggling to swim and his lungs were burning. He managed to get his bearings in time to see a blur streaking towards him. It was a shark-looking dude with an evil, very toothy grin. Hitoshi had enough time to scream out the very last air in his lungs before a second streak collided with the shark villain. Tsuyu had come out of nowhere and delivered a harsh kick to the guy's head. Her tongue snaked around Hitoshi, and as she launched towards the surface, she dragged him along behind her. The relief of fresh air was immense. Hitoshi was gasping and panting desperately. He didn't even notice he was still moving until his feet touched something hard. He looked up to find that Tsuyu had put him on the deck of a ship and climbed up herself as well. Midoriya was already on the deck. His costume still had small beads of water falling off, but it wasn't soaked through the way Hitoshi's was. Was it a waterproof material? Hitoshi should look into getting his switch to something similar. Midoriya was shaking his head like a dog and sending water droplets flying everywhere. Good to see you're all right, Midoriya, Tsuyu greeted him. You guys too, Midoriya nodded. How many villains did you guys see out there? At least 20, Tsuyu said. I counted close to 30, Midoriya agreed. He shot a quick gaze out over the side of the boat and frowned. I'm not bad in the water, but I worry I won't be able to keep up with some of these guys. I'm great in the water, Tsuyu told him, but I don't think I can handle those kinds of numbers. We've got to come up with a plan, Midoriya growled under his breath. He looked up at Tsuyu and then at Hitoshi. I think we should share what we can about our quirks, right? Tsuyu nodded. My quirk is frog. I can swim fast and breathe underwater through my skin. My legs are extra strong, allowing me to jump really high and kick really hard. I can stick to walls and my tongue can extend up to 30 feet and lift up to 100 kilograms. My quirk is called Wolf. Midoriya took over the second Tsuyu was done. It heightens my senses and my overall physical abilities. It also gives me certain physical qualities of a wolf, including wolf ears, fangs, and claws. Midoriya and Tsuyu both turned to Hitoshi. Fine, he grunted. He wasn't thrilled to be forced into working with these two, but he wasn't dumb enough to think he could handle 30 villains alone. My quirk is brainwashing, he told them. He expected them to flinch, but both of them just waited for him to continue. I can take control of anyone who responds to me. Are there any limits? Tsuyu asked bluntly. She didn't seem disgusted or anything, just trying to get info. No, Hitoshi shook his head. But it's pretty easy to break someone out of it. It only takes a small bump. How many people can you take control of at a time? Midoriya asked. One, Hitoshi huffed. It's not exactly the type of thing that can be used on a crowd. That's a shame, Midoriya sighed. Midoriya started biting at the claw on his thumb as his eyebrows knit together. I think I have a plan. I'm just not sure it's a good one. Great, Hitoshi rolled his eyes. Go ahead, Midoriya. Tsuyu ignored Hitoshi. I don't think it's wise to wait for them to make the first move, Midoriya told them. We need to hurry and go on the offensive. How do you expect us to take out 30 villains? Hitoshi scoffed. Together, Midoriya answered without hesitation. I'm going to go out there as bait. I might not be able to fight especially well in water, but my claws are still sharp and I should still be able to hold my own. You two can then focus on taking out the villains while I've got them distracted. How? Tsuyu asked. Tsu, you should try and sneak into the water too, Midoriya explained. Try for stealth takedowns. Maybe use your tongue to snatch a villain away and then silently take them out. He turned and looked at Hitoshi, which honestly surprised him. He figured he'd get left out of the plan. Hitoshi, you should stay on deck. I doubt any of the villains are gonna leave the water, so it should be fairly safe. From here you can heckle the stragglers and try and get them under your control. And what do I do once I have them? Hitoshi questioned. Get them to go to sleep, Midoriya shrugged. Or get them to leave, or attack their friends, or anything you can think of that might help. Fine, Hitoshi spat. It's a good plan, Midoriya, Tsuyu agreed. But are you sure you're up for it? It'll be really dangerous. So's doing nothing, Midoriya responded as he looked grimly out at the water. Wish me luck. With that, Midoriya stood back up straight and leapt the guardrail that surrounded the boat with a shout that sounded more like a howl. A splash and a few cheers from the villains marked the beginning of their plan. Izuku was surprised his plan had worked as well as it had. The entire fight had only taken about 10 minutes and he wasn't even that injured. Between Tsu knocking the villains out and Shinso getting them to fight each other, Izuku hadn't even had to fight that many. He'd only ended up with a few minor injuries, the worst of which was a bite from Shark Face on his calf. Midoriya, are you okay? Tsu asked as they made it to the shallows. She was eyeing the bloody gash on his leg. Nothing that won't heal, he shrugged. Honestly, it hurt like nobody's business, but now wasn't the time to worry about it, though it did fill the air with the metallic scent of blood. Come on, we should try and meet back up with the others. As they got to the edge of the water, they found themselves at the main plaza where Aizawa had jumped in to fight the horde of villains. The plaza was filled with heaps of unconscious villains. Izuku was impressed. He'd known Aizawa was good, but to see the results was a little different than just hearing the numbers. He heard Tsu gasp beside him and turned quickly to her. Her eyes were wide with panic as she stared out into the plaza. Izuku followed her gaze and cursed when he saw it. Beneath where the giant purple behemoth of a villain was crouched, crushed under his massive fist, was Aizawa. The pool of blood on the ground was only growing as he watched, and Aizawa didn't seem to be moving. God damn it, Kirigiri. The blue-haired villain cursed from the other side of the purple villain. If you weren't the exit gate, I'd fucking kill you. Regardless, Shigaraki, it isn't prudent for us to remain here if there are heroes on the way, the mist villain, Kirigiri said. But we haven't even encountered the boss yet, Shigaraki huffed. He growled in frustration before relenting. Fine, you're right. I'm glad you agree, Kirigiri nodded. The action caused the mist of his form to shake strangely. But before we leave, Shigaraki remarked with an evil grin spreading across his face. What do you say we ruin the symbol of peace's pride? With that, the blue-haired villain sprinted across the plaza. He ducked past the purple villain with a spin. He moved so quick he nearly blurred. He came straight at the three of them, his hand reaching out towards Tsu. Izuku didn't think. He moved. He grabbed Tsu and put himself between her and the villain. He felt a burning, nearly blinding, pain across his back. He howled as all thoughts were driven from his mind by the excruciating pain. Then just as quickly as it started, it stopped. Damn, Shigaraki muttered. You really are cool, Eraserhead. Izuku spun around as quick as he could, his clawed hand coming around for a swiping blow. His claws dug into flesh as the blue-haired villain turned back towards them. His hand tore its way across the villain's face, from beneath his right eye to above his left. He ripped the hand mask away from the villain's face as his claws made their pass. Fuck! Shigaraki screamed as he leapt backwards. His hand went straight up and covered his eyes, but the blood seeped through his fingers. Shigaraki, Kirigiri called out worriedly. Namu, Shigaraki shrieked, the anger turning his voice into a gravely roar. Kill the damn wolf and his little girlfriend. The purple villain responded instantly. Izuku didn't see it move, but it was suddenly directly in front of him, its fist raised to attack. That was all the warning Izuku got before its fist launched itself in his gut. Izuku crumpled to his knees. All the air had left him, and every gasping breath ached as he tried to get it back. His defensive instincts screamed at him to move. Izuku, in pain and with only dregs of air still in his lungs, lunged forward. His claws raked across the monstrous villain's chest. The purple beast of a man roared in pain. Izuku looked up and found a raised fist waiting for him. The fist came straight down and hit him in the head faster than he could even blink. The world went black. Ochako watched with a cold pit in her stomach as Izuku shielded Tsu with his body. Watching his flesh peel away from his back and flake into dust had turned that pit into a black hole. It ate away at all the warmth and substance within her. She was still by the entrance, but even from so far away she could see the awful wound. The bloody mess that used to be his right shoulder was sickening. But then he had turned around and struck back. For one wonderful moment Ochako thought that maybe he would be okay. The villain was clearly wounded and scrambling. But then, impossibly quickly, the purple monster had rushed forward. Seeing the creature drive its fist into Izuku's stomach had been the last straw for Ochako. She rushed forward. She ignored the people behind her calling after her and tapped herself on the wrist as she threw herself off of the steps. The world blurred at the edges of her vision as she rushed toward Izuku and the creature. Izuku got up and struck out, his claws carving their way across the creature's chest. But then the monster brought its fist down right on Izuku's head. No, Ochako screamed as Izuku crumpled and fell to the floor. She slammed into the creature with tears in her eyes. She slapped her hand across its chest, over the ghost of the already healed wound that Izuku had caused. She pushed off the slightly confused creature. She threw herself down onto the ground as the momentum pushed the monster into the air. What was that? The villain covered in hands screamed. Ochako grabbed onto Izuku's jumpsuit to keep from floating away. The fabric was rough and cold in her grasp. She stared at him for what felt like an eternity, not even daring to breathe until the slow rise of his chest caused a wave of relief to rush through her and a sob to rip its way out of her chest. Kurogiri, the villain called out. Ochako looked up and found him scowling around with his hand covering his eyes. He couldn't see. What the hell is happening? Another future hero has thrown the Namu and sent it towards the ceiling, the misty man responded. Get him back, the first demanded. Ochako looked up in sudden fear at the idea of the monster coming back. I believe that won't be necessary, the misty villain assured him. Ochako found the monster, Namu, just as he said it. Namu was crouched at the top of the dome. It pushed off and became nothing more than a black streak rushing through the air and straight towards her. Ochako didn't have any time. She threw herself protectively over Izuku as she watched the creature draw closer. A second streak, this one green, came from out of nowhere and collided with Namu. The monster was sent flying away from them. Ochako felt her mouth fall open as Tsu landed deftly beside her. Her dark green hair looked practically black as it clung wetly to her back. Only the bow tied in it kept it out of her face. Hey Uraraka, Tsu nodded casually, her eyes never looking away from the three villains. Her voice was so even and calm, she might have been calling her in a classroom. Tsu, Ochako gasped breathlessly. God damn it, Kurogiri. The blue-haired villain cursed. They don't sound dead. They aren't, Kurogiri confirmed. Why aren't they dead? He shrieked. Patience Shigaraki, Kurogiri chuckled. Namu is already on his way back. Ochako's head whipped around trying to find another streak of black. She missed it entirely. By the time she apparently found the right direction, Tsu was already on the follow-through of what looked like a vicious roundhouse kick. Uraraka, Tsu called as she straightened back up, staring after where she had apparently kicked the monster. Do you think you can keep up your quirk until help arrives? Ochako nodded quickly but realized her mistake just as quick. Yes, she said aloud, correcting her invisible error. The nausea was already turning her stomach, but what other choice did she have but to persevere? If she failed, she was dead. If she failed, Izuku would die too. She would do this because she wouldn't let that happen. Good, Tsu nodded. Then you protect Midoriya, I'll take care of this thing. With that, Tsu leapt in the direction she had been carefully watching. Ochako watched, but she quickly disappeared into the cityscape of the landslide zone. Horrible roars and crashes echoed from the collection of buildings. It seems Namu is occupied and we are left with the scraps, Kurogiri mused. His strange yellow eyes narrowed into mocking slits. Kill them, Shigaraki ordered. Very well, Shigaraki, Kurogiri agreed darkly. He raised his incorporeal hand towards Ochako and Izuku. The floor beneath them became swathed in the strange black mist that the villain controlled. Izuku plummeted into the darkness instantly, dragging Ochako with him. Suddenly they were falling. Ochako grabbed Izuku's face with her free hand. Their plummet instantly froze. Ochako almost lost her lunch as her stomach began angrily somersaulting within her. They were probably 100 feet above where they had been only moments before. Kurogiri watched them from down below. He raised his hand and for one horrible moment Ochako thought that it was over. This was going to be the end of both her and Izuku. She had just enough time to think that she was glad that she had gotten to know him. This impossibly sweet and wonderful man. She thought of him and his fanged smile, death quickly approaching. And then an explosion from the entrance stopped everything. No one could stop themselves from turning and watching the cloud of dust as it began to settle. Ochako was high enough that she was actually higher than the stairs at the entrance. She had a great view of All Might as he strutted through the dust cloud, a terrifying scowl on his face. "Apologies, students." All Might roared into the massive structure. His voice filled every inch of the place. No one could have missed it. "But have no fear," he continued, his voice rising, strong and sure. "For I am here." All Might leapt into action. Izuku groaned. Everything hurt. Every inch of his body pulsed and ached. It was excruciating. "Izuku." A weak voice wobbled from beside him. Izuku tried to lift his head and look at who had said his name. His head felt so heavy that all he succeeded in doing was opening his eyes. Still, it was enough. He could see her. Ochako was there, her eyes red-ringed and her hair a mess. Even still, just the sight of her brought a smile to his lips, even if he could only manage a small one. "Hey, Ochako," he said, his voice weak and gravely. "Izuku," she exclaimed as she lunged for him. She crushed him into a hug, her arms forcing their way beneath and around him. Izuku gasped in pain, but Ochako must not have heard because she continued to press her face into his chest. "Izuku, I was so worried," she cried into her chest. "It's all right," Izuku assured her as he tried to keep the pain out of his voice. He stroked the back of her head and smoothed her hair, the way he always did when his mother cried. Ochako suddenly released him and moved to arm's length as her hands rested on his shoulders. "No, it is not," she told him firmly. She still had tears in her eyes as she stared him down. "You could have died." Izuku gulped but nodded. "Give him a break, Uraraka," another voice cut in lightly with a ribbity chuckle. Izuku's head whipped to the side to see Tsu was sitting on the other side of the bed he was in. She looked more put together than Ochako, her ever-stoic expression still as calm as ever. She gave him a small smile when she saw him look her way. "I would have died if not for him after all." Izuku's eyebrows knit together hearing that. He remembered jumping between Tsu and the villain, Shigaraki. But it had been more instinct than anything. He was sure looking back on it that she could have handled herself. "You're right, Tsu," Ochako sighed. Izuku looked back at her. Her head had fallen, fresh tears still spilling down and dripping onto the bed. I was so scared." Izuku slowly raised his hand and placed it lightly against her cheek. Ochako's head snapped up to look at him, her eyes blown wide. He wiped away a tear as it fell down her cheek, careful not to scratch her with his claws. "I'm sorry," he apologized gently. He gave her a half smile, doing his best to keep it from turning into a grimace. "I didn't mean to scare you." Ochako put her hand over his and leaned into his touch. "I didn't mean to blame you," she whispered. "It wasn't your fault." "I'm still sorry," he chuckled. The movement hurt and he flinched a little. "Do you want me to get Recovery Girl?" Tsu asked. "Recovery Girl?" Izuku asked. He finally took a moment and looked around. He didn't recognize where they were, but he could guess it was a nurse's office. There were 2 beds in here, but the other one was empty. He hoped that was a good thing. "No one else was hurt besides you and Aizawa," Tsu told him as though she could read his mind and see the anxiety there. "Where's Aizawa?" Izuku asked, but he could barely get the words out. "They sent him to the hospital," Tsu explained. "They say he's going to be fine." "That's good," Izuku sighed. He leaned his back onto the pillow. "Indeed it is," a new but familiar voice agreed from the doorway. Izuku turned his head to see All Might standing there, an unfamiliar man in a trench coat standing behind him. "All Might, sir," Izuku gasped. He tried to sit up, but All Might stopped him with a raised hand before he managed to get far. "No, young Midoriya." All Might shook his head. "Please relax. If you strain yourself on my behalf, Chiyo will have my head." Izuku was prepared to ask who Chiyo was when a voice hollered from the office. "You're damn right I will," Recovery Girl shouted out. All Might flinched away. Izuku stared a little wide-eyed. He never would have imagined the #1 hero could look afraid. "All Might." The man behind All Might cleared his throat. "Ah yes." All Might nodded as he straightened back up. "Young Midoriya, allow me to introduce Detective Tsukachi." "It's a pleasure to meet you." Midoriya greeted him with a small bow of his head, though it probably looked more like a nod with him laying back against the pillows. Likewise, Tsukachi smiled at him. "Are you feeling well enough for me to take a statement?" "I'm afraid you're the last one we need." "Of course," Izuku agreed readily. This was all a part of heroics. The police were really the ones who handled a lot of the official aspects of arrest and investigation. Working with them was vital for any hero. Tsukachi took a seat at the end of the bed, All Might standing right behind him. The two of them listened as Izuku detailed everything he could remember. He left nothing out. Detective Tsukachi's pen never left his notepad. The entire time Ochako's hand was linked with his own. Occasionally she would rub the back of his hand comfortingly. It was incredibly pleasant, and it made it all easier to recount. "So then you managed to blind Shigaraki?" Tsukachi asked after Izuku had finished his account. "I doubt it." Izuku shook his head. "The angle wasn't quite right. I might have gotten his left eye, but not his right." Tsukachi hummed as he leaned back in his seat. He tapped his pen against his notepad. Finally, with a sigh he stood. "This was incredibly helpful, Midoriya." "Thank you." "Are you leaving already, Tsukachi?" All Might asked in surprise. I got everything I need, Tsukachi confirmed with a nod. I need to get the report filed as soon as possible and update the APB. All Might bit his bottom lip. Tsukachi raised an eyebrow at the hero. The two seemed a lot more familiar with each other than Izuku would have expected. Did Tsukachi and All Might know each other beyond a general work relationship? What are you mulling over? Tsukachi asked with a tilt of his head. Well, I just thought that these three really proved themselves today, All Might mumbled. Tsukachi stared at All Might for a moment. Ah, he said slowly. I'm unsure how to proceed, All Might confessed. Izuku was now wholly confused. A quick glance at Ochako and Tsu and he didn't think he was the only one. Ochako was watching with a curious expression. Tsu was more stoic, but even her features had turned into a slight scowl, or maybe it was a pout. You could always call. No, All Might cut him off. Did he look pale? Tsukachi sighed. Then I suppose you could just explain it to all of them, he shrugged. All Might gasped. With the secret, All Might shook his head. If you were willing to trust them with it individually, I really don't see the difference, Tsukachi told him. But I need to get this report in. Are you going to be all right on your own? Of course, All Might nodded, though he looked more unsure than his tone let on. Tsukachi gave the hero a smile and patted his arm. It'll be fine, Toshi, he chuckled. With a quick bow in the direction of the three of them, the detective left. All Might stood awkwardly at the end of the bed for a minute, the three of them all watching him as he squirmed beneath their gazes. All Might cleared his throat. Yes, well, I suppose I may as well start with this. Young Uraraka, young Asui, I'm going to show you something shocking. I ask that you do your best to remain calm. Yes, sir, Tsu nodded instantly. Okay, Ochako agreed. Her eyes flickered questioningly to Izuku, but she held her tongue. Instantly, All Might was hidden by a poof of smoke. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized what All Might was doing. The hero's emaciated true form took a single step out of the cloud, a grim expression on his face. This is my true form, he explained gravely. Izuku took a quick peek at Ochako. Her jaw had dropped, her lips just barely parted to form a small O shape. Izuku squeezed her hand, trying to return just a small part of the comfort she had provided for him. Ochako's head instantly whipped around and her eyes focused on him. Izuku didn't know what he could say to help. Instead, he gave her a tight-lipped smile. I was injured a number of years ago during a confrontation with a truly vile villain, All Might explain. Who? Tsu riveted. She sounded more curious than shocked, and when Izuku looked at she still wore her stoic expression. I'm afraid his name would mean little to you. All Might shook his head. What matters is that I am no longer able to be the hero I once was. I'm only able to hold my heroic form for about 3 hours these days. Probably less now. But you defeated that monster so easily. Ochako gasped. Thanks entirely to you, young Uraraka, All Might told her with a smile. His eyes almost seemed to sparkle with pride. Wah! Ochako screamed. Izuku had to admit he was rather curious as well. Due to the creature having no gravity, my first punch sent it soaring out of the USJ with ease, All Might explain. Wait, Izuku gasped as he put the pieces together. Suddenly the room was spinning. He turned back to Ochako and found her giving him such a sad smile that it was like she had punched him in the gut. I couldn't just let you die, she explained under her breath. And suddenly it was like he could see it. He saw her standing between his crumpled form and the horrible monster of a villain that had taken him out with 2 swift blows. She was like a Valkyrie, standing tall and beautiful and undaunted as she faced impossible odds. It was breathtaking, but it was also terrifying. What if she had died? Thank you, Izuku whispered. It was all he could think of to say. She had probably saved his life, and as much as he hated the thought of her fighting the beast, he respected her too much to say it. You should thank Tsu too, she chuckled wetly. Izuku hadn't noticed the tears returning to her eyes. She saved both of us. Tsu? Izuku asked as he turned to his friend. Tsu looked at him with a serious gaze. I merely held off the Namu while Uraraka defended you, she shook her head. From the reports I received you fought toe-to-toe with it, All Might huffed with a single laugh. It was like you said, Tsu shrugged. Without gravity it was a lot easier. Indeed, All Might nodded, though it does nothing to diminish the bravery or skill you display. Thank you, Tsu said calmly. Izuku thought he could see a sparkle of pride in her eyes though. Was he getting better at reading her, or was she simply unable to hide such a powerful emotion? Izuku wasn't sure. The three of you each displayed bravery and skill and something even more vital to the being of a hero, All Might explained. He looked at each of them in turn, ensuring that they were paying attention. The spirit of self-sacrifice, being willing to throw yourself into danger for the sake of others. It is one of the most important aspects of a true hero, and not one that can be taught. You have each proven yourselves as true heroes today. All Might continued, and Izuku felt his heart swell at the praise. He didn't notice All Might nervously looking at them for a moment as a result. And so, to you three I have an offer to make. An offer? Tsu asked. Izuku would be eternally grateful that she was here. She was here to ask the questions that Izuku's tongue was too heavy to manage. You see, I have been looking for a young hero for some time, All Might told them. someone who I was confident would be just and kind and ready to save the hearts of the people, someone to inherit my power. All Might waited and let his words sink in. Not even Sue managed to ask anything as they tried to process what in the world he had just said. It was just impossible to understand. What did he mean? You see, my strength is not something I was born with, All Might explained as though he could read Izuku's question in his confused expression. It was passed to me like a sacred torch, and now I am ready to pass it to one of you. But that's not how quirks work, Izuku murmured in a daze. All Might gave a full-bodied laugh. It sounded strange in this skinny form, less powerful. I said much the same thing, he said with a shake of his head. And yet it is the way this quirk works. A pure source of crystalline energy that gets passed down to a new hero in each generation. A hero who adds their strength and grows the stockpile. Adds to one for all. When All Might said the words, they seemed to almost radiate with power. Izuku felt like he couldn't breathe. It just didn't make any sense. How was he supposed to accept any of this? I know it's a lot to take in, All Might assured him. He had a kind smile on his face as he looked at them. So, which one of us are you offering this power to, All Might? Sue asked. All Might suddenly grew a very sheepish expression. He scratched at the back of his head and cleared his throat. About that, he laughed nervously. I wasn't sure. I thought I might get your input. You should offer it to Midoriya, Sue answered instantly. What? Izuku exclaimed as he sat bolt upright. He wobbled as the sudden movement caused a horrid pain in his stomach. Ochako grabbed his shoulders and helped hold him upright. Sue looked at him seriously. You're the one who best fits All Might's description, she said. Her voice was so sure that Izuku found himself stunned, unable to refute her. You never hesitated out there. Your plan in the flood zone put you in danger, but you didn't care, and you trusted us to support you. It was only thanks to your confidence that we were able to commit to the plan at all. Sue's voice was calm and her face was still stoic, but Izuku watched her and he could see the emotion in her eyes. There was so much fear. Then, against that disintegration villain, you threw yourself between me and him. A tear fell and slowly made its way down Sue's face, and its presence on his stoic friend's cheek was difficult for him to accept. It was incredibly stupid of you, but you saved my life. You deserve it more than me. She's right, Ochako agreed, her voice a whisper that ghosted in his ear. Izuku turned in surprise and found Ochako with tears in her eyes too. You deserve this, Izuku. But you saved me, Ochako. Izuku shook his head. Doesn't that make you just as worthy? No, Ochako bit her lip. She looked away from him before she continued. Because I wasn't being selfless. Izuku stared at her in shock. What was she saying? I saved you, Ochako said, and the way she said it, it was like she thought it explained everything. Izuku stared at her with growing confusion. I saved you because I thought you were going to die and because I couldn't live with that. I wanted you in my life a little longer. Ochako, Izuku whispered. He raised his hand and put it over hers on his shoulder. She looked at him, the tears fresh in her eyes. He couldn't help but smile at her. I'm glad you were selfish. I'm not ready to be out of your life either. A wet sob burst from Ochako and she threw herself into his chest again. As much as it hurt, it still took very little of his strength to keep the both of them up. Izuku hugged Ochako close and smiled. He bent his head down and rested his cheek against the top of her head. The scent of her strawberry shampoo filled his nose, and he couldn't help but sigh contentedly. Ahem, All Might cleared his throat. Ochako instantly threw herself away from Izuku, the permanent blush on her face growing and darkening to a deep red color. Izuku chuckled but held onto her hand as she went. He turned back to the slightly uncomfortable All Might with a smile. How could I ever say no to that? Izuku chuckled. Indeed, All Might nodded with a big smile of his own. Slowly his form inflated, and the hero was his full self once again. So, I ask you, young Midoriya, will you inherit my power? Izuku looked up into his hero's eyes and gave a sure nod. Yes, good, All Might exclaimed with a laugh. He reached up and pulled a single golden hair from his head and held it out. Then eat this. Now you wait just a goddamn minute. A screech sounded from across the nurse's office. Everyone turned and found a very red-faced recovery girl standing in the doorway to her office. Chiyo, All Might asked in confusion. Recovery girl blurred forward and was suddenly beating on All Might's knees with her cane. You damn fool, Toshinori. She scolded him harshly. All Might began hopping backwards with his hands raised in defeat. I know you are not about to give that god-forsaken bomb of a quirk to a boy who only regained consciousness not 30 minutes ago. Well, you see, All Might tried to explain. Don't think you can lie your way out of this one, Recovery Girl growled. You'll just have to wait. I will tell you when he is ready. With that she finished shuffling him to the door, something Izuku hadn't even noticed. She slammed the sliding door in his face. She turned back with a huff, glaring at Sue and Ochako. You two better behave or I'll kick you right out too. Yes, ma'am, they nodded instantly. With one final hump she returned to her office and Izuku was left feeling surreal. Recovery Girl wouldn't let Izuku leave the hospital for the rest of the week. Classes were cancelled as Nenzu revamped campus security, so he didn't miss any class. It also meant that Ochako was able to come keep him company. She would show up each morning, carrying a homemade breakfast and wearing a breathtaking smile. They couldn't do much besides talk, but it was still everything to Izuku. They got to know each other, asking any question they could think of. She was from the Mai prefecture, where she had lived with her parents. They ran a construction company. She loved them dearly, and it was clear in every story she told of her time at home. She was apparently going to be a hero so she could give them a comfortable retirement, something they were adamant she didn't have to do for them. Her favorite food was matcha. Her favorite book was Frankenstein. Her favorite movie was Shawshank Redemption. She loved folk pop music, something Izuku had never even heard of. When he had told her, the next day she brought a speaker and she played all her favorite songs for him. It was strange, but Izuku found it fit her perfectly and he loved it. When Recovery Girl finally told him on Sunday that he was healthy enough to leave, he almost didn't want to. He worried that something would be different on the outside, that he wouldn't get this time with her. He was wrong though. Monday morning came and Izuku was awoken by a knock on his door. Izuku groggily got up and made his way across the room. He answered the door and found a nervous Ochako standing there. She had 2 plates of bacon and eggs with her. Ochako, Izuku murmured as he rubbed at the sleep in his eyes. I thought we could have breakfast together now that you're out of the nurse's office, she confessed to him. Izuku's heart fluttered in his chest. Why yeah, Izuku nodded. He stepped back and out of the doorway. Come on in. Ochako slipped past him and into the room. Her eyes flickered to him as she walked past and her blush grew a little deeper. Izuku looked down at himself in confusion, and instantly his blush grew to match hers. He wasn't wearing a shirt. Sorry, Izuku apologized quickly. He scrambled to grab a shirt from his closet, not even looking at what he grabbed before he threw it on. It's okay, Ochako assured him as she set the plates down on the bed, smoothing out the comforter. She sat down, crossing her legs as she made herself comfy on his bed. Izuku sat down too, picking up his plate and digging into breakfast. He tried not to think about the fact that this was the first time he'd ever had a girl in his room. A girl he was almost kinda sorta dating. He tried not to think about how he was going to smell her strawberry shampoo in the air tonight as he tried to go to sleep. Is it nice being out of the nurse's office? Ochako asked. Her voice sounded tight, like she was trying just as hard to keep from freaking out as he was. Somehow that made it easier to answer. Yeah, he nodded as he took another bite of bacon. I didn't realize how comfortable my dorm room made me until it was taken away. Ochako looked around the room, lit only by the lamp beside his bed. It cast a warm light across the room that was much more soothing than the fluorescent lights of Recovery Girl's office. There wasn't much for her to look at besides the 2 posters on his walls, so she quickly moved her attention to them. You did say you were a Maruko fan. Ochako laughed when she saw them. Izuku tried not to blush as he looked away. Yeah, he nodded. Hey, Ochako said softly. Her hand came to rest atop of his. Izuku turned and found her smiling at him. It's not a bad thing, right? Izuku sighed. He did his best to smile back. I for one, Ochako commented as she put her empty plate on the floor. Izuku had finished his plate so she took it and put it down too. I'm glad you're out of the nurse's office. Yeah? Izuku asked. Something about the way she said it made his throat feel dry. Was it hot in here? Yeah, Ochako nodded. She crawled closer to him as she spoke. I couldn't exactly kiss you with Recovery Girl there. She was so close to him now. Her breath splashed across his face with every word. And now? Izuku asked breathlessly. Ochako didn't answer with words. Instead, a smirk crossed her face as she leaned close. Their lips met and it was like ice water ran down his spine. It was so different from their first kiss. This was so much more passionate. Izuku's mind couldn't think of anything but this. He couldn't focus on anything but Ochako. The taste of her lips filled his mouth. The scent of her shampoo filled his nose. It felt so natural that it was impossible to doubt anything he did. They separated at some unknown sign. They were both panting as Ochako pressed her forehead against his. Now we can finally have some privacy, she whispered. It took Izuku a moment to put together that it was an answer to his question. He'd all but forgotten he'd asked it. He racked his brain for anything to say, but it was still so hard to think straight. Luckily, he was saved by the bell as his phone started buzzing. Ochako leaned off of him and turned off the alarm. When did we end up lying down? Izuku asked as he took in their position. He was laying down on the bed, Ochako straddling his lap as she bent down to him. Ochako came back, her hands resting on his chest as she smirked down at him. I'll take that as a compliment, she teased. Izuku couldn't think of anything to say, so he just nodded in agreement. It had been really nice, but it was still getting easier to think now, and something else occurred to him. Wait, it's only 7, Izuku asked. Ochako instantly blushed. Izuku quirked his head and waited. It wasn't a big deal, but he was curious. I thought, Ochako murmured, biting her lip as she paused. She shook her head and tried again. I wanted to talk to you about something. What's up? Izuku asked. He sat up, putting his back against the bed frame. He took Ochako's hands, interlacing their fingers and holding it between them. He felt a surge of excitement when she smiled at him for it. I like you, she finally admitted. Suddenly Izuku's heart was soaring. He felt a giant smile stretch across his face. His chest felt all bubbly and floaty. I like you too, Izuku instantly assured her. Ochako was instantly beaming too. It made Izuku happy to know that he had caused that. I wanted to ask if you wanted to go steady, Ochako told him. She was still smiling, but there was a touch of nervousness to it. Izuku couldn't help but grin at the way she had said it. It was so small town, so Ochako, that he should have expected it. Yes, Izuku nodded. I'd like that. Instantly a squeal of excitement came from Ochako. She threw herself at him, pinning him to the wall and picking back up where they had left off. They were almost late for the morning meeting. They actually sprinted past Aizawa in the hallway outside the room. Izuku hadn't thought Aizawa would make it. He hadn't even heard that he had been released from the hospital. He was sure he could feel Aizawa's glare burning into his back, and he didn't dare turn around and question him about it. Luckily, both he and Ochako made it to their seats before Aizawa made it through the door. Mercifully, Aizawa didn't comment on their close pass as he made his way to the front of the room. However, Izuku and the class finally got a good look at him. His entire head was wrapped in bandages, only his eyes visible beneath the white cloths. Both of his arms were in full casts and dangled in slings across his chest. What the hell? Kirishima exclaimed. Sensei, Ada cut in. Is it wise for you to be out of the hospital with your injuries? Aizawa's steely glare silenced everyone before anyone else could comment. I'm able to stand, so I am able to teach, Aizawa growled out at them. You lot have more important things to worry about. That got everyone's attention. What could possibly be so serious that it was more important than their teacher's health? The sports festival is coming up, Aizawa informed them. All the tension in the room shattered. Izuku almost laughed at the absurdity of it. How is that more important? Ochako exclaimed. Should we even be having the sports festival after the villain attack? Gyro questioned. Look, Aizawa cut back in with a sigh. I understand your concern, but the president insists that we can't show any weakness. Instead, going through with the sports festival is a chance for us to display our strength of spirit and courage in the face of adversity. Regardless, the sports festival remains an important opportunity for you all to prove yourself to future heroes. So, you better take this seriously. Izuku and Ochako walked through the lunchroom hand in hand. Together they made their way to where Mina, Tsu, and Kirishima were sitting. I don't know, man, Kirishima shook his head. From the way Aizawa made it sound, it must be pretty important. Have you heard the way he speaks about normal things? Mina laughed. I swear he threatened to expel Kami last week for waking him up from a nap. I think he was kidding, Tsu commented. Kami was crying in the common room for like an hour, Mina shot back. Yeah, that sounds about right, Izuku joked. He got a few chuckles as a reward, but before conversation could kick back up, All Might appeared as if out of nowhere. He stopped at the end of the table and proudly posed. Young Midoriya, he called happily, as if they weren't all already paying attention to him. He wore a vibrant mustard yellow suit that must have been visible from space. Yes, sir, Izuku called back. I need to speak with you for a few minutes, All Might explained. I'm afraid it may take the rest of your lunch break. Okay, Izuku nodded. He stood and turned to Ochako, giving her a smile. I'll see you in class. I'll be there, she smiled back. Izuku ducked and gave her a quick kiss before picking up his tray and following All Might towards the door. He couldn't help but smile at the explosion of questions that came from the table behind him. He wanted to turn back and see if Ochako was blushing from all the attention, but he pretended he couldn't hear and slipped out of the cafeteria, dropping his tray off by the door as he passed. All Might led him through the school. They went to a room that Izuku had never been to before. Inside there was a kitchen, a little sitting area, and a giant printer. For the life of him, Izuku couldn't figure out what the room was supposed to be. All Might seemed perfectly comfortable as he made his way inside into one of the couches. He plopped down, sagging back into his true form as he did. He was swimming in his suit now. When he looked up and found Izuku standing in the doorway, he cracked a grin. Never been to the faculty lounge, I take it? All Might chuckled. No, sir, Izuku shook his head. Well, don't worry, All Might assured him. He waved Izuku to come in and motioned towards the couch opposite his own. It's mostly just a place for the faculty to annoy Aizawa. Izuku laughed and his nerves slipped away. He moved into the room and took his seat. Now, young Midoriya, All Might began. I received word from Recovery Girl that you should be all healed. But I wanted to ask you as well, how are you feeling? Better, Izuku nodded. Her quirk is really amazing. You don't have to tell me, my boy. All Might huffed in a laugh. He rubbed almost absent-mindedly at his side as he spoke, at the wound that Izuku knew was there. But more than that, no one would blame you if you were shaken up. Maybe I was at first, Izuku murmured. It was like I was waiting for the other boot to drop. But once I was able to see that everyone was safe, it wasn't so bad. That's good, All Might nodded. Do you feel ready to inherit my power? Izuku sat up straighter and set his shoulders back. Yes, sir, he nodded. All Might puffed up into his heroic form, instantly refilling the suit. He reached up and plucked a single golden hair from his head. "Then eat this," he instructed. Izuku had been prepared for it. He'd seen All Might tell him the same thing when he was in the nurse's office. But even still, the sight of the #1 hero telling him to eat hair was a touch surreal. He hesitantly reached out. All Might handed him the hair and gave him an encouraging nod. With a sigh of acceptance, Izuku popped the hair in his mouth. It was a horrid experience. The hair stuck to his throat and practically refused to go down. Combined with the strong sour taste that had Izuku gagging, it was quite difficult. Finally, it was down. Izuku sat on the couch, panting, and trying to catch his breath. "Well done, my boy." All Might nodded. He'd shrunk back down to his true form when Izuku wasn't looking. "So what now?" Izuku asked. "Now we wait," All Might shrugged. "It'll take a few hours for your body to digest the hair. And once it has, well, one for all is rather different for each wielder," All Might explained. "For my master, it heightened her natural quirk and gave her super strength. For me, it gave me strength and then later my transformations. We'll have to experiment and discover exactly how it's affected you." "Then should I just head back to class?" Izuku asked. If it was gonna take that long, then they would have to experiment after class. "There was something else I wanted to talk to you about actually," All Might confessed. "Sure," Izuku nodded. "Young Midoriya, as I'm sure Aizawa has already mentioned, the sports festival is quickly approaching," All Might explained. "It's something I'd like you to take seriously." "Yes, sir," Izuku nodded. "I don't want to overpressure you," All Might explained, "but this is a fabulous opportunity for you to present yourself to the world. As the future symbol of peace, this is a chance for you to tell the world that you are here." All Might's words squeezed at Izuku's heart. It wasn't the pressure of it. No, this was everything he'd ever dreamed of. This was his chance to prove that he could do it. "I won't let you down," Izuku gasped out. His voice sounded like it was barely a whisper. "I know you won't," All Might smiled. "Just go out there and give it your all, my boy." Izuku nodded. His head was spinning. Or was it the room? "Midoriya," All Might called. His voice sounded off though, laced with something. Worry. Izuku's head snapped up and he found All Might staring at him. The last thing he saw was All Might reach a single hand out and then the world tilted sideways. Izuku hit the floor and his vision went black. Izuku woke up slowly. It felt like he had to drag himself up to reality. He couldn't seem to find the motivation though. So, when he finally opened his eyes, Izuku groaned and quickly closed them again. "Izuku," a voice murmured sleepily. Just hearing that voice brought a smile to Izuku's face, a weak one, but a smile all the same. The scent of her strawberry shampoo was so strong there was no doubt who it was. It was worth opening his eyes to see her face too. Ochako sat beside the bed he was in. Her head was resting on her arms atop the blankets. Her eyes were half-lidded, which based off the dark room and the night sky visible through the window probably meant she'd been asleep. "Hey Ochako," Izuku rasped dryly. Holy hell, did that hurt. Coughs racked through Izuku's chest, only worsening his paining throat. "Here," Ochako said as she held a glass to his lips. Izuku gulped the water down greedily. He emptied the glass in 2 gulps, and when Ochako refilled the glass he downed that one too. "What happened?" Izuku asked as he rubbed at his throat. All Might said he wasn't sure, Ochako told him. She sounded nervous. "You got his quirk and then you blacked out. He brought you straight here." Based on how dry his throat was, that had been days ago. But other than that, he didn't feel bad. He actually felt pretty good. But he could tell that it had been a hard few days on Ochako. She had bags under her eyes that could rival Aizawa's. It was exactly like the last time. Here she was watching over him and here he was making her worry. Izuku brought his hand up to Ochako's cheek. "I'm sorry, Ochako," Izuku whispered. He brushed his thumb across her cheek. It was supposed to be a gentle, comforting thing. Her gasp of pain was so unexpected that Izuku ripped his hand away like he was the one in pain. Izuku's elbow smacked into the metal frame of the bed and broke clean through the metal rod. Izuku froze. His eyes were wide as he took it all in. The broken bed, Ochako's wide, fearful eyes, the thin line of blood from where Izuku's claw had cut her cheek, not an inch away from her eye. Izuku's breaths were suddenly coming too fast. What had just happened? Something was wrong. Ochako reached her hand out to him, but Izuku scrambled away from her. What if he hurt her again? He couldn't. He wouldn't. Izuku didn't realize he'd pushed himself off of the bed until his butt hit the floor. He looked up and found himself staring at a hole in the wall, the bed on the other side. "Izuku!" Ochako screamed after him. But he couldn't answer. He couldn't breathe. He had to get away. Izuku was running before he'd really processed it. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away. Izuku wasn't sure how long he ran. He wasn't sure how far he made it. He had no idea where he was. But eventually he couldn't run anymore. The tears were streaming too fast. He collapsed onto the floor and tried to stop them. But no matter how hard he tried, the tears continued to fall. He pushed himself against the wall, making himself as small as possible. He curled up into a ball, clutching his knees with all his strength. He hardly felt it. What was happening? Was it one for all? Izuku tried to breathe. What did he know about one for all? All Might had said it was crystalline energy, a stockpile. It had given him super strength. Was that all this was? It seemed so much bigger than that. No, there was something else. Something to do with All Might's master. It had made her quirk stronger. What if it had done the same to his? What if the weak mutation quirk that had labeled him as a freak and a monster had been given a boost? What if it really had turned him into a monster? A strange hiccuping sound filled the air. Izuku peeked out from between his knees and the sound seemed to get louder. It looked like he was looking through a tunnel, but he could still see that he was alone. With a start he realized that the noise was from him. Midoriya, a voice called nervously. It was a voice that, even through the hysterical rambling of his thoughts, Izuku could recognize. It was All Might. His hero was here to slay the monster. The noise grew louder at that. All Might's head poked around the edge of his tunnel. He was crouched low to the earth. Midoriya, All Might called again. His voice was still soft, but it was so sure, so steady. Midoriya, it's going to be okay. The noise grew at his words. Finally, Izuku realized what it was. Laughter. He was laughing. The world had always made a joke out of Izuku's life, and it was like he finally got the punchline. Midoriya, can you hear me? All Might asked. Izuku couldn't answer him though. What if he hurt All Might? He was already so injured. What if he killed him? What if he hurt her again? You can't hurt me, Midoriya, All Might said. There was so much conviction, so much confidence, but Izuku just couldn't believe him. Then All Might's hand grasped his. He ripped Izuku towards him so quickly that Izuku barely had time to register it. And then he was wrapped in All Might's arms. No, Izuku screamed. He thrashed wildly, trying to get away. He had to get away. He couldn't hurt someone else he loved. But no matter how much Izuku shoved, he couldn't get away. The strong arms wrapped around his body were like iron bands, and no matter how much he struggled, they didn't budge. I've got you, All Might whispered. The words were like cold water. Izuku found himself clutching All Might closer instead of shoving him away. He wept into the hero's shirt and the fear fell away. All Might held him close, and it was like he was holding Izuku together. They sank to the floor together and Izuku wept. It took a long time before he calmed down. But All Might stayed with him. He held Izuku in his arms and he made him feel safe. When he finally stopped the tears, Izuku sheepishly let go of the hero. What do I do, All Might? Izuku asked. There was no point in asking what was happening. He knew what. He was a monster now. The why didn't matter. We figure it out, All Might answered. He had a smile on his face, not his cheesy over-the-top smile. This one was filled with such kindness that it almost broke Izuku down to tears again. How did you find me? Izuku asked to change the subject. Wasn't that hard, my boy? All Might chuckled and gestured down the road. Izuku looked where he pointed and found a street with cracked pavement and buildings with broken glass. When Izuku noticed the cracks were all craters, he put two and two together. I did that, he whispered. Don't worry, my boy, All Might assured him. You're in one of UAS training cities. They're meant to be destroyed. Izuku was still stunned at the level of destruction he had wrought, but All Might's words helped. Come on, young Midoriya. All Might sighed as he stood back up. He offered Izuku a hand. Why don't we get you some breakfast and we can figure out where to go from there? Why, yeah. Izuku nodded and took All Might's hand. Izuku sheepishly followed behind All Might as they walked back into the nurse's office. The room was a lot busier than when he'd left. Or at least he thought it was. He hadn't really paid all that much attention to what was around him the last time. It was definitely brighter. Recovery Girl was speaking with Aizawa near the door to her private office. Cementos was inspecting the hole in the wall. Izuku would have to be sure to apologize about that. Present Mike was standing by the window comforting Ochako. It looked like she'd been crying. It sent a knife through Izuku's heart to know that he had caused those tears. We are here, All Might declared proudly. It just made Izuku want to shrink in on himself all the more. Curse his large frame. Izuku, Ochako cried out when she saw him behind All Might. She ran over and threw her arms around him. Izuku froze, not even daring to breathe. How could he? He didn't know what was safe. That meant nothing was. Careful now, young Uraraka, All Might laughed. Ochako released him, moving so that her hands rested on his elbows as she held him at arm's length. It wasn't better, but it at least allowed him to breathe again. Are you okay? Ochako asked him. Izuku's breath caught. The scratch on her cheek had already been healed. Now it was a paper-thin scar. It wasn't even all that obvious, but it made Izuku's chest so tight to see it there. I hurt you, Izuku whispered. His throat was too tight to say anything else. Ochako's hand came up to her cheek, lightly touching the mark. Not really, she shook her head. She gave him a soft smile, but it only made his heart hurt worse. Just surprised me. Izuku bit his lip and looked away. His fists were clenched so tight that he could feel the claws pressing into his skin. They didn't cut into him. Hey, Ochako's voice cut into his dark thoughts. Her voice was so firm it demanded he look at her. He did and found her scowling at him. None of that. Did you mean to hurt me? Of course not. Izuku rushed out. Then it's fine, Ochako said. Her voice was so much softer than he deserved. The smile on her face was so gentle. It warmed Izuku's insides and sent butterflies rampaging in his stomach that warred with the guilt that twisted inside of him. Izuku sagged as some of the tension left him, nowhere near all of it, but some. She was too good for him. It's not fair that you have to put up with all this, Izuku muttered darkly. I happen to be more than willing to put with my boyfriend being a caring idiot. Ochako teased. Boyfriend? A new voice gasped from behind them. Both Izuku and Ochako turned to find a short green-haired woman standing in the hallway with wide eyes. Mom, Izuku gasped. Mom, Ochako nearly screamed. My baby. Inko did scream as she threw herself at Izuku and hugged him close to her. Izuku froze just as instantly as he had when Ochako hugged him. His mom didn't seem to notice. She just kept shoving her head into his chest and trying to squeeze the life out of him. He couldn't help but notice how little effect it had on him. Why didn't you tell me? She shouted, muffled by her hug into Izuku. My baby boy is becoming a man. Then she let go of him and rushed past him. He heard Ochako squeak in surprise and turned to find his mom holding Ochako's hands as she looked her up and down. And she's so beautiful, Inko whispered. Then she shook her head as if dispelling those thoughts. I'm Izuku's mother, she introduced herself. But you can call me Inko, dear. I am Uraraka, Ochako stammered. She looked over his mom at Izuku and he could see the confusion and the cry for help. Izuku wanted to help, to grab his mom and pull her into his side to keep her out of trouble, but he didn't trust himself to do it. And Mom, Izuku called, his hands still locked at his sides. You gotta calm down. Inko rounded on him in an instant, tears still in her eyes. How could you not tell me? She demanded. It just happened, Izuku explained desperately, holding his hands up to try and stop the oncoming assault. We only made it official yesterday. Ochako coughed. Monday. What day is it? Izuku asked before he could even think about it. Thursday, his mom told him, instantly somber. She stepped forward and took his hands in hers, and Izuku had to stop himself from pulling away. He froze instead, not daring to move. They called me when you collapsed. I was so worried. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered. Then they called me again saying you panicked when you woke up, Inko explained. What happened? Oh, Izuku muttered, unsure of what to say. It was a secret. Not to mention he had no idea why One for All had caused him to pass out for 3 days in the first place. I don't. He was cut off as Netsu, the freaking president of the university, hopped up on his shoulder as casually as one might take a seat in an office. I can explain that, Netsu chirped. You see, Mr. Midoriya, your quirk seems to be undergoing a late-stage mutation. You can think of it as a sort of second puberty if you will. Puberty. 3 voices exclaimed. Izuku's face was instantly on fire and looking to Ochako he saw her blushing as well. His mom's eyes were wide and tears were quickly collecting once again. Whether the change is due to the stress of recent events, age, or your recent activities with Ms. Uraraka is unclear. Netsu continued unbothered by their reactions, or the deepening blushes on the student's face at the insinuation of the last option. It is clear, however, that you are experiencing a very rapid change. Is it gonna get worse? Izuku asked, his voice barely a whisper. We don't know, Netsu informed him. You have already undergone a significant transformation. Your already dense musculature changing to something about on par with tungsten and other heavy metals. Your claws likewise have become stronger and if my suspicions are correct, sharper as well. We won't know what other changes you have undergone without some testing. Is that safe? Izuku asked. He couldn't help but think of the destruction he had left in his wake as he had fled this room. The hole he'd put in the wall on accident was a glaring reminder of how dangerous he was. Of course, Aizawa huffed, and Izuku jumped, having forgotten it wasn't just the 4 of them here. This is UA. We aren't unfamiliar with quirk developments, even extreme ones. All right, Izuku nodded. It's okay, my boy. All Might assured him as he put a hand on the shoulder opposite the one Netsu was still perched on. I have total faith in you. And those words helped. He felt the knot in his stomach loosen just a little. His shoulders sagged as he closed his eyes and nodded. He trusted All Might. He would keep everyone safe. Izuku. His mom's voice cut through his thoughts. He opened his eyes and saw her scowling ever so slightly at him. She looked more concerned than angry though. What is it? What's wrong? And nothing, Izuku stammered, shaking his head in denial. He didn't need to worry her. She stared at him for a moment more, but she let it go with a tense nod. Her expression was still full of worry, and he knew he'd failed to really convince her. We should be off, young Midoriya, All Might announced. We? Izuku asked as he turned to the hero. Yes, All Might nodded. We'll head to the gym and help you get a feel for your new strength. Right, Izuku nodded. The sooner the better. Can I come? Ochako asked. Not this time. Netsu chirped as he leapt from Izuku's shoulder to Aizawa's beside him. We're limiting it to faculty until we can be sure that it's safe, Aizawa explained. Onward, my noble steed, Netsu called loudly as he grabbed onto the side of Aizawa's head. Izuku could only stare in confusion as Aizawa, without any reaction to Netsu's strange behavior, began walking off down the hall. He shook himself out of his stupor as he watched All Might follow. Go on, his mom nodded, giving him a loving smile. But you're coming home this weekend, right? Izuku agreed with a sigh. Hopefully he would have some control by then. He gave Ochako a smile, one she returned, and then he turned and followed after the faculty. You better bring your Araka with you too, young man. His mom called after him with a laugh. Izuku stayed forward-facing, hiding his blush as he quickly walked away. Izuku's mom just kept laughing next to her as they watched Izuku walk away. Ochako could feel the blush grow ever so slightly on her cheeks at the realization that she was being left alone with her boyfriend's mom. As the realization dawned, said mother turned to her with a smile. If you want to, of course, she said. What? Ochako asked, confused. Come over for dinner, she explained. I would love to get to know the woman who captured my baby boy's heart. Oh, Ochako breathed. Then her mind caught up and the words rushed out to make up for being rude. Of course, I'd love to. Good, Inko smiled. Any preferences? And not really, Ochako shook her head. She didn't want to be rude. Alrighty then, Inko hummed. I suppose I could always go with Katsuden. It's his favorite, you know. I do, Ochako nodded. She couldn't help but smile a little wider as pride bubbled in her stomach. He told me. Inko just smiled up at her. Then her eyebrows scrunched just a little and her expression turned concerned. He's going to need our help, you know, she said. What? Ochako asked with a tilt of her head in confusion. Inko just gave her a sad sort of smile in response. With all of this, she explained, it'll be hard for him, the changes. Why? Ochako couldn't help but ask. He's stronger. He'll be a better hero. Inko had tears in her eyes as her smile grew ever so slightly. Remind him of that, she told her. And remind him that it's okay to make mistakes. Inko's hand came up and brushed against Ochako's cheek. It took her a moment to realize it was right where Izuku had cut her earlier. Inko brought her hand back and turned it around, showing 4 small white dots on the back of her hand, one between each knuckle. When he was little, he didn't know how sharp his claws were, Inko explained. He wouldn't hold my hand for a month afterwards. Ochako gasped as she realized the implication. He'll get better, she assured Ochako. But he won't forgive himself. But he didn't do anything wrong, she shook her head. He would never hurt me intentionally. She didn't see the hug coming. It nearly choked the air out of her with how tightly the woman wrapped her arms around her. You'll be good for him, Inko whispered. Thank you. Oh, of course, Ochako stammered. Then Inko had released her and stepped back, her hands wrung wordily in front of her chest. I'll see you on Saturday, she said with a smile. Then she was gone, and Ochako was left alone in the hallway, unsure of where to go and what to do. One for all seems to have blended with your natural mutation. All Might hummed as he and Izuku stood in a shoving contest with their hands interlocked. But you're not quite at 100%. How much am I at? Izuku grunted as he shoved with almost all of his strength against All Might's hands. The hero flexed and Izuku was shoved back an inch, the claws of his back foot dragging along and ripping apart the mat. I'd say probably 40%. All Might told him, seeming unbothered as he continued to stand against everything Izuku could throw at him. Then All Might stepped forward and Izuku was slammed over his shoulder and into the mat. It wasn't all that hard. It didn't even knock the breath out of him, but it was still jarringly fast. How do I turn it off? Izuku asked. You can't. Aizawa huffed from the side of the gym. What do you mean? Nezu pushed, still perched on the man's shoulder. I've tried several times to activate my quirk on him, Aizawa explained. It's had no effect. It means that this is just his natural strength now. I'll kill someone. Izuku groaned from his place on the floor. He hadn't bothered to get up, and now it didn't even feel worth it. Now none of that, All Might huffed. This I can actually help with. What do you mean? Izuku asked as he looked up at the hero, standing over him with his hands on his hips. I was worried I'd have to explain everything since One for All is so different from your natural quirk. That would have included how to activate it, All Might explained. But it would have been difficult as even when I was younger activating it was never really the problem for me. My problem was much like your own. I destroyed everything around me for months. Months? Izuku groaned. He couldn't be this destructive for months. The sports festival was next month. I had to learn control on my own. All Might reminded him. My master was not able to access the full strength of One for All, so she wasn't able to help me. That must have been rough, Izuku sighed. It was, All Might nodded. But it means I can help you. What do I do? Izuku asked as he sat up. He was ready to continue. He had to be. You must practice, All Might explained. It's the only way. You must relearn the strength of your body until you know exactly how softly to grab even the most fragile of objects. Here, Aizawa called from the side of the room. Izuku turned in time to see him toss a metal bar at him. Izuku reacted on instinct, grabbing it from the air before it could hit him. He stared at Aizawa for a moment, but the professor just stared back, an unimpressed eyebrow raised at him. Izuku quickly looked away and to the metal bar in his hands. It was an empty dumbbell bar, meant to be loaded with however much weight was desired. He couldn't help but notice that his fingers had put large dents in the heavy metal. That's a good place to start, All Might nodded. Familiarize yourself with it and find the right grip strength to hold it without damaging it. Right, Izuku sighed as he switched his grip to an undamaged portion of the bar. He was frustrated to find his fingers putting dents in it as he just shifted the grip. This was going to take some time. Izuku returned to his room hours later. He had yet to get the feel of the exercise. It was as if even the softest of touches was enough to destroy anything and everything. He could only be grateful that there was nothing but his own possessions to destroy in his room. He didn't have his key, but trying the door he found it unlocked. Of course, as he turned the handle it snapped off and crumpled like putty in his hand. Damn it, Izuku cursed with a tired sigh. He pushed the door open, ignoring the way the wood cracked as it broke the metal latch. The scream from inside the room, however, stopped him cold. He looked up to find Ochako sitting there on his bed, wide eyes staring at him. Sorry, he stammered. I broke the knob. It's okay, she assured him with rapidly waving hands. You just startled me. They stared at each other for a moment. Izuku barely even daring to breathe with her here. Are you gonna come in? Ochako asked softly. I don't know. Izuku shook his head. He couldn't look at her any longer. It hurt to remember this morning. He found himself staring at the floor instead. Ochako didn't say a word and Izuku jumped when her hands made their way to his shoulders. It's okay, she assured him, but he couldn't respond. He'd lose what little air he had if he did. He let her guide him, her hands barely a feather touch against him. They made it to the bed and he sat down, Ochako quickly sitting beside him. Aren't you scared I'm going to hurt you again? Izuku asked. He was. He was terrified of it. It was tearing him apart and making a cold sweat drip down the back of his neck. No, she said, like it was simple. You don't have to lie to me. Izuku shook his head as he used the last of the air in his lungs to huff out the words. The smack of her hand against his arm was barely even discernible to him. Don't give me that, Ochako huffed. You told me you can smell fear, mister. Do you smell any fear? He was going to have to breathe in now. Not just to respond, but his lungs were burning. It was silly to not want to. He couldn't hurt her by breathing, but he was just so terrified of the possibility. But he had to breathe, and as he took a breath through his nose, doing his best to hide how desperately he needed the relief it brought, he could smell nothing but the scent of her strawberry shampoo. From how dense it was in the air, she must have been in here a while. No, Izuku relented. That's right, Ochako growled. Her hands grabbed the side of his face and he let her drag his face around. She was glaring at him. He supposed he deserved that. Because I know you would never hurt me. Not intentionally, he assured her, but unintentionally. What if he touched her with the same strength that he touched that metal bar? He'd break her. Then her lips crashed against his. Izuku's eyes blew wide and he froze yet again. He didn't even dare to part his lips as she pressed against him. Any movement was dangerous. Ochako pulled herself off of him after a moment, her glare gone and replaced with wide eyes. You don't want to kiss me? Ochako asked, her voice wavering ever so slightly. No, Izuku nearly shouted. I mean yes, of course I want to kiss you. Ochako seemed to sag with relief, her body falling back against him gently. I can't, he told her. I spent all day trying not to break steel, and I couldn't even do that. How am I supposed to trust myself not to hurt you? Oh, Ochako murmured, a scowl overtaking her features again as she thought about that. Then a devious smirk replaced it. Without a word she crawled forward. Izuku froze as she crawled into his lap. But I trust you, she whispered into his ear. Ochako. Izuku's words were barely audible as he hardly dared to breathe. She pulled back, and an almost evil gleam filled her eye. He'd never seen her smile like this before. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.